right, are we live? I think so. We are on YouTube. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2024 Legislative Priorities Hearing Night for the Montgomery County State Delegation. I'm Chair of the House Delegation, Julie Polakovich-Carr, and along with our Senate Delegation Chair, Senator Ben Cramer, and the entire state delegation, welcome to tonight's hearing. We've had a robust interest from members of our community, including residents, stakeholders, local elected officials, to testify tonight. We have about 70 witnesses in total. So as a reminder for people who are signed up to speak tonight, you were shared earlier this evening or today over email, the list and the order for witnesses. You will be admitted into the Zoom meeting room shortly before your panel is called. And in the meantime, you can watch the meeting on the YouTube live stream. We do ask that you please close that live stream when you enter the Zoom room so we don't get background noise. As a reminder, we do use a time limit for all of our witnesses this evening. And when you enter into the room, the Zoom room, you should see an option to see the blue sky timer app. If you click OK on that, then you will see the timer on the screen, but it's okay if you don't. There will be a bell that goes off at the end of your time limit. As a reminder, our local elected officials and representatives of local governments have 5 minutes each. For representatives of quasi-governmental organizations, 3 minutes each, and for everyone else, 2 minutes each. And again, when your time is up, the bell will go off. We will take questions from members of the delegation at the end of each panel of witnesses. And then we ask after that question period is over that our witnesses please do exit the Zoom room, and you are welcome to continue watching the rest of the hearing on YouTube. So with that, let me turn it over to Chair Cramer for his opening remarks.
Thank you for that, Chair Polakovich-Carr. Good evening to all. Let's get the party started. The first group coming up in the first segment will be the following people: County Executive Mark Gelrich, County Council Member Kate Stewart, City Council Member Linda Moran, and also Teresa Hessler, City of Gaithersburg. So please, let's begin with County Executive Mark Gelrich.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the entire delegation for all your efforts made last year and previous years to bring back as much from the state as you possibly bring back. It really helps us in the efforts we're making, particularly in economic development, to have this kind of support. So I appreciate the relationship we have, and I hope we get to do great things again in this session. I want to especially appreciate your prioritizing the county's needs over the years. You know, one example for us that's really important is the IHC, or the Institute for Health Computing, as maybe not everybody's familiar with. It is a big deal in Montgomery County. They're approaching 70 employees right now. We've got companies that are asking to co-locate near or with them, and we're excited about that. We've actually been able to slightly broaden the original plan, which is to focus only on around medical uses and health tech. But because we got a number of requests from pure tech plays in the AI space, the university is now open to helping us along developing an AI component. And the county is in the process of finding space to open up our own first AI incubator in Montgomery County. So we're taking advantage of this to help drive the efforts that the county is making. Basically, our focus is very heavily on economic development. To be blunt, nothing you don't know, absent the ability to generate sufficient tax revenues to invest in things that drive development, we will not be successful. And, you know, I've often told people that, you know, as liberal as I might be, I have a clear understanding that absent economic growth, none of the liberal things I want to do will ever happen. And so we are wedded to a program of expanding Montgomery's economy as broadly as I can. I think you can see it in the life sciences. You can't help but drive around the county now and see the kind of progress is being made. We're even making progress over in White Oak with the project in Viva White Oak with Bramble's company, which has its own life sciences component and is talking about being able to bring life sciences over there, which is not something that was seriously anticipated before. So we see opportunities on both the east and west sides of the county and the north of the county. So I feel pretty good that we've laid a foundation, but there's a lot more we need to do. In light of the state and federal issues, there's an urgency in this moment We anticipate the federal government will not be much help. It's pretty clear that we don't align with their priorities. And our concern about the state is real. The state finds itself in a serious revenue problem. And I know you know all that. And I'm sure you're all turning over in your heads how you're going to meet the needs that you have to deal with apparently more limited resources. We've got to figure out a way to go forward, even when there are limitations and other of the resources that our partners have. And we're committed to doing that. We are doing an evaluation. We've done an evaluation of what Montgomery County doesn't have that other jurisdictions have, particularly in the life sciences space, and are actively planning on bringing those pieces into Montgomery County. Transportation is a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it. We're working to bring down a well-known name incubation center from Massachusetts that's interested and actually approached us about locating here. We've got a number of companies, both nationally and internationally, that we're courting to increase their presence in Montgomery County. And so we're busy doing this, and we just need to, drive it as far as we can. And economic development clearly would alter our trajectory going forward. It also will alter our trajectory vis-a-vis Virginia. Virginia's made massive investments that the county and the state have never been able to do. Northern Virginia has one tax that alone contributes $500 million a year to the economies of several Northern Virginia counties solely for the purpose of building infrastructure. And we compete against Northern Virginia, where the property taxes in Tyson's Corner are over $1.50, and Montgomery County's taxes are $1.04. People are not fleeing Montgomery County or avoiding Montgomery County because we have a low tax, because we have a high tax rate, because we actually have a low tax rate. Our tax rate is not our problem. Our lack of infrastructure is what's been identified over and over as our problem. And the years that Virginia took to separate themselves from us, they separated themselves by building infrastructure that we don't have. So we're convinced that we've got to move in this direction. We have an outdated tax system. It was, largely produced in an era of a residential economy and relying on residential taxes. We need to, I think, mimic the tax structure and the policies of Northern Virginia. And I'll stop there.
All righty then. Well, thank you, County Executive. Certainly appreciate that very much. And thank you for all your good work and service to the county. Very much appreciated. Next up, please, we have Councilmember Stewart.
Great. Thank you so much, and good evening to you all. Before I walk through some of our other highlights of our priorities in the county, I first wanted to say thank you on behalf of my colleagues to all of you and let you know how much we appreciate and value the collaboration that we've had with all of you. Collaboration is critical since we represent the same people, and as the headwinds and the unknowns we are facing now will require us to collaborate and to work even more closely together. As the county executive was just saying, as we look at the new administration entering the White House in January, we know we need to keep the lines of communication open, and collaboration will be ever more important. As we look at our priorities, I know you have our written documents in front of you or they've been sent to you. I just want to highlight a few things. First, the blueprint for Maryland's future. While we are keenly aware of the state's fiscal problems, we urge you to maintain the commitment to the blueprint, even if it means timelines may need to be adjusted or other components of the project need to be relooked at. On the environmental front, the county has put in place, as you all know, a very aggressive plan to achieve our climate change goals. And the latest news that Maryland has reduced emissions at a faster rate than any other state is really impressive, and we want to continue with the collaboration and that work. Turning to health and human services, we're not unique in our desire to see much needed progress on addressing behavioral health needs. I know you are keenly aware of this problem, and what further complicates matters is in Maryland and in the county, we share the dubious distinction of having the longest emergency room wait times in the country. This needs to change, and I know the General Assembly is working with healthcare community across the state to better understand why this is and how we can reverse this course. We're also well aware of the housing crisis that we're facing, not just in our county or the state of Maryland, but across the country. And we very much appreciate all the work that was done in the last session and look forward to working with all of you to advance our housing needs. On transportation, if we focus on our Vision Zero goals, we believe we need to be more aggressive in initiating and looking at opportunities for really addressing the serious and fatal crashes that occur on our roadways. This afternoon, the County Council started to review the local bills, and we want to say thank you to everyone who's already put in bills in this area. And we're urging you to seriously consider allowing the county to place more speed cameras on highways with higher maximum speed limits, granting us the authority to reduce speed in locations where there are documented high numbers of injuries, and authorizing a system of increasing fines for excessive speeds recorded by cameras. I do want to say thank you for the noise camera legislation last session, and let you know that we have moved forward in the county with our own legislation to make sure that we can put that in place. And we may need to ask for an extension of the pilot program as we look at how long procurement will take. I also want to thank Chair Corman and Senator Feldman for all their work on WMATA and making sure that we continue to work with our partners regionally to ensure the fiscal sustainability of WMATA. To highlight a couple of the capital projects, I know you'll be hearing more from folks from Strathmore regarding the roof replacement and Glen Echo Park regarding the Spanish Ballroom renovation, but just wanted to highlight them, as well as the North Bethesda Metro Station northern entrance. And finally, I just again want to reiterate the thanks of the Montgomery County Council for all the work that you do in Annapolis on behalf of our residents. Some people say that we are approaching uncharted territory, but unfortunately, I think all too well we know what is ahead of us as we look at the future with what is coming into the White House, the new administration, and I know our fiscal challenges. And we are here in Montgomery County to work with you all in advancing our goals and making sure that we are caring for the needs of our residents. So thank you very much, and I appreciate this opportunity.
And thank you very much. We appreciate that, council member. Next, from the city of Rockville, Linda Moran, please.
Yes. Good evening, Chair Kramer and Chair Plakovich-Carr. I'm Linda Moran, Assistant to the City Manager. The Rockville Mayor and Council send their regrets for not being able to participate this evening. This hearing conflicts with their November 18th business meeting. On behalf of Mayor Ashton and the City Council, I thank you for the opportunity to share Rockville's 2025 state legislative priorities. We ask for your support for the Mayor and Council's 2025 session priorities and look forward to collaborating with the delegation to advance the following. In the priority areas of education, school funding, and youth services, Rockville will advocate for sufficient state funding for school construction projects and operations to support education from birth through community college. For Montgomery County to receive a fair share of funding from the state to cover the cost of implementing the Blueprint for Maryland, and increase funding for youth programs, including Youth Service Bureau funding, out-of-school activities, juvenile services for youth involved in repeat crimes who do not have access to restoration services support. In the priority area of Vision Zero and the pedestrian master plan, Rockville will advocate for Vision Zero efforts, including comparative negligent laws for pedestrian safety, for the State Highway Administration to take responsibility for the maintenance of sidewalks and bike paths on state roads, complete streets implementation on high crash state roads, including Maryland 355 and Beers Mill Road, and don't block the box legislation to improve traffic flow and safety. In the priority area of public safety, Rockville will support MML's priority legislation to allow non-sworn personnel to sign off on speed camera violations. In the priority of areas of climate action and housing, Rockville will support legislation aligned with Rockville's climate action goals and will advocate for just cause eviction legislation to protect tenants from unjust lease terminations. In the priority area of infrastructure maintenance, Rockville will advocate for the preservation of municipal highway user revenues that help maintain Rockville's transportation infrastructure. In the priority areas of tax relief and revenue, Rockville will support expanding the state's homeowners property tax credit for low and moderate income homeowners and individuals with disabilities, and will support MML's priority legislation to add up to a 3% local fee on food and beverages to the admissions and amusement tax, generating additional municipal revenue. In the priority area of senior services, Rockville will advocate for funding for enhanced senior programming, recreation and wellness programs, and aging in place initiatives, as well as Rockville will support the State Board of Elections and MML legislation authorizing municipalities to enter into agreements for election support. As far as legislative bond initiatives, Rockville has two projects that it's advocating for. The first is that Rockville seeks $500,000 in state funding for the development of the Talbot Street State Park. This project aligns with the city's and state's commitment to equity and inclusion, and it involves demolishing a decommissioned water tower and designing and constructing a new 0.5-acre park on the city-owned parcel. This park will serve several nearby multifamily complexes, including Woodmont Park Apartments, providing much needed recreational space for children and families, as there are no city parks in this part of town. The second project is advocating for $500,000 in state funding for the renovation of the Elwood Smith Community Center. This project also aligns with the city's and county's commitment to equity and inclusion by removing ADA barriers, reconfiguring office spaces to support out-of-school programs and community activities, installing new flooring, and converting gender-specific restrooms to multiple single-user ADA-compliant restrooms. Rockville provided a tour of the site last Friday to our wonderful District 17 delegation, and we very much appreciate their support. It has been a pleasure to highlight Rockville's Mayor Council's 2025 session priorities. We're excited to continue our partnership with the delegation, making a positive impact in the lives of our residents. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Ms. Moran. And now the last person on this particular panel, representing the city of Gaithersburg, Teresa Hessler, please.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Teresa Hessler, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the city of Gaithersburg to present the city's 2025 legislative priorities. The city is currently in their council meeting this evening and therefore is directly unable to be in attendance. On their behalf, I extend their gratitude for the opportunity to share the city's priorities with you this evening. The city of Gaithersburg will continue to support efforts by the Maryland Municipal League to push their priority bill of local admissions and amusement tax authorization for food and beverage sales. This legislation will help municipalities like Gaithersburg and will be authorizing, not mandating, allowing counties and municipalities the choice to adopt this tax based on their local needs and priorities. Additionally, if drafted accordingly, this legislation would align with efforts to create sustainable and equitable revenue models for municipalities, as well as encouraging visitor contributions, helping to balance the tax burden on residents while addressing community needs. Secondly, the city of Gaithersburg advocates for mandating municipal engagement in the Consolidated Transportation Process, or CTP. While counties currently have a structured role in the process, municipalities lack the same level of engagement. Municipal input is currently limited to informal opportunities during the CTP Roadshow, with no obligation for the Maryland Department of Transportation to consider or act on municipal feedback. This perspective is especially important as municipalities have direct insights into the impact of these projects on their communities, including local traffic patterns, as I know the speakers before me mentioned, economic development, and sustainability goals. Whether achieved through legislation or administrative action, this priority ensures that municipalities like Gaithersburg are recognized as key stakeholders in the transportation planning process. Additionally, traffic concerns and advocating for intersection improvements at Route 117 and Watkins Mill are a critical priority for the city of Gaithersburg. Over the past 2 decades, Gaithersburg has experienced a substantial population growth and has become a major hub for various companies. These changes have intensified traffic demands, particularly at key intersections, as mentioned, which serve as critical connectors for residents, businesses, and commuters. We have potential solutions like traffic enhanced signaling, lane adjustments, speed cameras, and other cost-effective strategies to improve safety at the short term. On behalf of the City of Gaithersburg, we thank you for your consideration of these priorities, and we look forward to working with you throughout the 2025 legislative session and beyond. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Hessler. And before any of this panel parts ways with us, colleagues, anyone have any questions? If so, please raise your hand and hopefully somebody will spot it and shout it out. Any questions for this panel? Going once, going twice? I don't see any. So at this point, thank you all on the first panel.
Thank you. Proceeding to our second panel, we have the president of our local Board of Education, Carla Silvestre, as well as our still relatively new superintendent of Montgomery County Public Schools, Thomas Taylor. Turn it over to you for 5 minutes each. Thank you.
Good evening. I am here, as has been stated, with Dr. Thomas Taylor, our new superintendent of schools, and we are very grateful for the opportunity to discuss our priorities for the upcoming legislative session. In September, the Board of Education adopted the 2025 platform, which focused on providing access and opportunity to every student, recognizing diverse paths to success and the inherent right of every student to learn in safe schools. In addition to our ongoing interests, which include the importance of preserving local autonomy and opposing unfunded mandates, the board identified 5 priority issues that represent challenges and opportunities we see in MCPS. We believe the solution to these challenges can benefit students, educators, families locally, and across the state. One priority is the need to revisit the state's graduation requirements. We hear from students and staff who report that the current graduation requirements are not adequately preparing students for their chosen paths after graduation. In some cases, the graduation requirements are not relevant to the areas the students want to pursue. In others, students are not able to explore classes that interest them because there is no room in their schedule due to the onerous graduation requirements. The last time graduation requirements were reviewed was before the pandemic and before the Blueprint for Maryland's Future was adopted. These significant changes in public education require us to revisit the requirements to ensure they are still relevant for today's students. Another area of academic concern is for our students who are attempting to pass the GED exam. Maryland, and only Maryland, requires these students to take the Reasoning through Language Arts section of the exam in English. All other sections are also offered in Spanish. As a result of this restriction, students who might otherwise earn their GED credential fall short. Removing this artificial barrier may result in increased academic and employment opportunities for our students. I believe Senator King and Delegate Wims are interested in championing this cause, and for this, we are grateful. Our final priority that has an academic focus concerns virtual education for students. Last year, the board made the difficult decision to eliminate our virtual academy due to budget constraints. We were not the only county in that unfortunate position. Because many counties have had to reduce or eliminate their virtual programming options, we are asking that our education community, including county representatives and individuals from MSDE, come together to determine the best way forward so that virtual offerings are available for students across the state. Thank you again for your ongoing support. We will now hear from our superintendent, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, President Silvestri, and it is such an honor to join you today. Thank you so much for your support and the opportunity to connect with you earlier this year. To echo a lot of what President Silvestri had said, the budget issues that resulted in the elimination of the Montgomery Virtual Academy have not gone away. In fact, taking a look at our outlook over the next few years, it's pretty grim. As a result, we need to be able to maximize the funds that we have available for the greatest impact. In that vein, we are asking for some relief to the current blueprint requirement that school systems pay all costs associated with advanced placement and international baccalaureate course exams. We know that there are some students in our school system for which covering these costs are imperative. We also have students who do not need this assistance, and we have many students who are in the middle. We are asking that each county board be permitted to implement an income-based approach to address these fees. This will allow us to continue aid for our families with the greatest need while differentiating our resource allocation in a limited and focused way. Additionally, although we know that some of our schools require physical safety upgrades, locking doors and security cameras and tight budgets are a challenge for us. As a result, we are asking for increased flexibility as it concerns the Safe School Fund grant. Currently, the grant can be used for things like training and education. We would like for building upgrades to be included in the permissible uses so that we can have additional funds available to improve the physical safety of our buildings and, as a result, the physical safety of our students, staff, and visitors to our campus. And finally, one of the ongoing interests that Ms. Silvestri mentioned at the beginning of her presentation was the need to oppose unfunded mandates. This is vitally important for us. Budgets will be tight. We predict that budgets will be tight for the next several years. Every penny is important. There is simply no room for adding a little bit here and a little bit there. So we ask you to critically review the bills that come your way, even the ones that have a neutral fiscal note or that may not necessarily have all the extra costs associated outlined for you. We ask that you consider, will this have additional staff or additional duties that are assigned to staff? Will we need to find a space in buildings to accommodate an additional service as tied to a potential piece of legislation? And all of these things have eventually a cost in some way, shape, or form. And if it's not a monetary value, what is that value and how is it associated? So we ask that you please talk to us if you'd like to talk to us and partner with us for us to review anything that comes across your desk if that's a help to you, because these unfunded mandates do have an impact on us, and we'd love to work through some of that with you. We thank you for your partnership in keeping the needs of MCPS in the forefront as you engage in this work during the upcoming session, and thank you so much.
Thank you both. I'll recognize Delegate Kaufman for questions.
Thank you, Chair Plakovich-Carr. I just have one brief one. I was speaking the other day, Dr. Taylor, to a council member, and he told me that the number of students who have 504 plans has increased 50% in the past 2 years. And I'm just wondering if you think that trend of the number of students found eligible for 504 plans under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 will continue, because that's an important thing for us to know in terms of funding.
Well, I think the good news is I don't think the escalation has been quite 50% over 2 years, but it has increased substantially. And I would say that we're watching a few metrics very closely in MCPS. So Delegate Kaufman, you're spot on in terms of identifying things that will be eventually significant cost drivers. Providing additional supports and services for our students who have a 504 plan, or even our students with disabilities who have an IEP, and our students who are accessing the curriculum as an EML student who are emergent multilingual learners, that does have a cost challenge. And those percentages are going up for us. And even though we are relatively flat in our enrollment, those enrollments tend to go up, and they have more significant cost drivers associated with it. So that is something that we're monitoring very closely, and something that I think as a state delegation and as a delegation representing Montgomery County, it would be helpful for us to keep that in the back of your mind as we look at things like funding formulas and how we might adapt to different student groups based on need.
And I don't see any other raised hands, so that concludes our second panel. Turning it back to you, Senator Kramer.
Thank you. And the next two coming up, Gloria Aparicio Blackwell, speaking for the Montgomery College Board, followed by Samara Hussein, who is a Montgomery College student. So please.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Gloria Aparicio Blackwell. I am the chair of the Montgomery College Board of Trustees. We are grateful that we can count on you to help the college fulfill its important role in our county. As an alum, I truly know the value of your support. MC helped launch my future, and now I'm here before you. With you, MC's 45,000 students can seize opportunity through credentials of economic value and become the homegrown workforce we need. In fact, the $100 million Leggett building represents your commitment to unlocking the potential of every student.
Oh.
So, thank you. This year, the college needs your commitment to the CADE funding formula, which provides operating support to community colleges. These funds enable the college to create Maryland's HVAC techs, teachers, and nurses. As you consider CADE, please consider that our enrollment continues to grow. Our faculty and staff deserve fair compensation, and it takes more than excellent faculty inside the classroom to help students succeed. It takes a village of tutors, counselors, and social workers outside the classroom to help students to graduate. In fact, it takes more strategies applied outside the classroom, mobile markets, food pantries, lactation stations, and a strong tech infrastructure to tear down the barriers that impede student success. So, consider how many community colleges help Marylanders open doors to opportunity, and how our alumni can move our great state forward. I seek your help with capital projects. The Rockville campus library is out of date and needs attention. Please also help us move forward with a new student service center at the Germantown campus. Thank you. Muchas gracias. We're grateful for your support, and you're going to hear from our student to tell the story that displays for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Montgomery delegation. It is such an honor to speak with you today. My name is Samara Hussein, and I'm a proud Montgomery College student studying public health. I plan to graduate in December and transfer to Trinity Washington University, where I have already been accepted. My goal is to work in public health administration right here in Montgomery County one day. I am here to thank you for your ongoing support of Montgomery College and to ask for your continued support to keep MC affordable for students like me. I'm also here to ask for support for the much needed renovation of the Rockville campus library. Growing up in Bangladesh, higher education in the US had always felt like an impossibility for me. But now my dream has become a reality. MC's affordable tuition, along with the support of my family, especially my aunt and uncle, and my 2 part-time jobs, has made it possible for me to pursue my degree and plan for my future. MC has given me far more than just an affordable education. It has given me countless enriching opportunities for growth. From supportive counselors and dedicated professors to a vibrant student life, MC's truly helps its students thrive and feel at home. One of the greatest resources of our college is the library, which is the heart of our community. However, it does need a little bit of renovation. An updated library will enhance our learning. For students, it's not just a place to study, it's a haven. We need up-to-date spaces, quiet spaces to focus, computer areas where we can prepare for our assignments in between going to jobs and attending classes, and spaces to meet with our classmates to work on group projects and to study for our exams. With the modern libraries, I am confident that our already wonderful students will excel. Thank you so much for your investment in the future of students like me and for the support you show our college. MC has given me hope, opportunity, and the chance to pursue my dreams, And because of your support, Montgomery College can help countless more students to pursue their dreams too. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for sharing the priorities of Montgomery College. Colleagues, anyone have any questions for this panel? I don't see any hands. Oh, I do. I see Senator King. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention about the CADE funding. That is something that I've been fighting for 20 years. Every year we think that we won't have to battle for the money again this year, and we always end up doing that. I don't think there is a lack of support for CADE funding, but with the budget the way it is this year, it's anyone's guess about whether we can continue with that or not. But just know that that it's a priority of ours, and if it's at all possible, we'll make it happen.
We always appreciate you, Senator King, because I know you are a true champion of Montgomery College. Anything that you can do, anything that we can provide to make a better case, let us know. You know that we are the
Okay.
engine. We are the engine. So thank you so much for your support. Very appreciative.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Senator King, for those comments. And we do appreciate all you do to fight for Montgomery College and the universities at Shady Grove and for education in general.
Thank you both. We will next turn to our panel with our witnesses from the universities at Shady Grove. We have Dr. Ann Kademian, Andrew Koop, and Anna Eckert. You may proceed.
Good evening. It is such an honor to be here this evening. I'm Ann Kademian, the Executive Director of the Universities at Shady Grove, and I want to begin by thanking you all for your tremendous support for USG over the past 24 years. I look forward to working with the delegation and all of our partners to move us to the next generation of higher education in the county and the state. USG is committed to building a next generation model of higher education, one that is a place-based partnership among learners, among multiple education institutions and employers, and one that is motivated to achieve the following measures of success, where every learner has a seamless journey across educational institutions, where every learner is career ready, where every learner engages with employers for mentoring and for experiential learning, where every learner graduates as close to debt-free as possible, and every learner has choices and opportunities for meaningful jobs and great careers when they earn a degree or a credential. To achieve these outcomes, we need to think and work together as an ecosystem of educators, employers, government, and community partners. Tonight, I'm joined by two USG partners, Anna Eckert, who's the Lead Innovation Specialist with American Type Culture Collection, or ATCC, and Dr. Andrew Koop, who's a professor in the Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences and Associate Dean for Graduate Programs at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, supporting the pharmacy programs at USG. Our collective testimony this evening highlights USG's commitment to developing talented, career-ready graduates as the most important driver of economic development in our county and our region, and the need to tackle this challenge in partnership across educational institutions and with employers. USG is a unique and innovative model of more than 20 years established to create accessible and affordable higher education opportunities for thousands of students who work, who have family responsibilities, who are financing their own education, and many who are first in their families to go to college. Part of an affordable pathway from community colleges to bachelor degrees and graduate degrees, USG brings the talent and expertise and 80 high-demand degree programs from the University System of Maryland partners to one location. Expanding that work today means delivering accessible and affordable higher education at scale and extending the return on investment from completion of a degree to meaningful careers and economic development. USG understands that talent development is the key driver for economic development, and it is at the heart of our place-based partnership model. And I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, who's going to share an example of this work, Anna Eckert with ATCC, and then Dr. Koop will share the MS in Pharmaceutical Sciences and internships with AstraZeneca. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Anna Eckert, the Lead Innovation Specialist at American Type Culture Collection, located in Gaithersburg. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Tonight, I want to highlight the burgeoning relationship between the universities at Shady Grove and ATCC right here in Montgomery County as a tangible example of an industry academic partnership that's made an impact on the talent in our regional life sciences industry. In my current role, I'm responsible for launching innovative programs within ATCC and acting as a partner to the wider scientific community. ATCC is a nonprofit, global biological resource center and standards organization, and this year we are celebrating 100 years in business. The key to staying in business for a century is great talent, and as you know, the life sciences industry in the region is in desperate need to find and retain highly educated employees to meet our growing needs. In the next 10 years within Montgomery County alone, it's expected that there will be over 1,400 openings annually in the life, physical, and social science occupations. We at ATCC believe strongly that to meet that need, partnerships between industry and higher education are the key to finding and retaining that high quality talent to meet this high demand. Last fall, in collaboration with USG, we established the Student Partnership and Research Collaboration Program, or SPARC, with 5 of their students. The key to success for this partnership program was developing around the unique needs of USG students. These students are diverse, and many are the first in their families to attend college. We hired these students for the full academic year, providing part-time, flexible schedules that accommodate classes and exams every term, and paid them $28 an hour. The goal of the program was to provide high-paying, equitable opportunities for students to gain valuable experience in a real-world setting in R&D labs that many of them otherwise wouldn't have the chance to experience. These students rose to the challenge in a big way, and we have been consistently impressed with the high caliber of students that USG produces. 2 of the 5 students have since joined ATCC full-time after graduation. After a very successful pilot year in 2023, we expanded the program and we're now hosting 7 students in roles such as cell bio, microbiome, and product development. In addition to these internships, we have increased our activity with USG by participating in career exposure events and mentoring opportunities to support these students campus-wide. We ask that you continue to support USG so that it can remain a choice institution in our region, focusing on industry academic partnerships like the one between ATCC and USG. In this way, we can continue to make tangible, sustainable, and scalable progress towards eliminating the gap for educated talent in our industry today, right here in Montgomery County. Thank you again for your support of the universities at Shady Grove. As an institution and partner for us, supporting USG is a measure of the sound investment you are making in the future of our county and state. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andy Koob. I am Professor and Associate Dean for Graduate Programs at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy at UMB. UMB and the School of Pharmacy is proud to be a partner with the universities at Shady Grove. And the Masters in Science in Pharmaceutical Sciences program, as Anne mentioned, with students located at Shady Grove, is key to the mission of Shady Grove to support and expand pathways to affordable, high-quality public higher education, to meet the workforce and economic development priorities of the region and the state, and to work with partnerships with academic, business, public sector, and community organizations that promote student success, high academic achievement, and professional advancement. The pharmaceutical sciences prepares our graduates for careers in the biotech industry and government agencies. With expanding private investment in the county, we need to ensure continued expansion by providing top-notch educated growing workforce. Our program started in 2019 with 6 pioneering students. I am proud that we have now educated over 100 master's students, many of whom have taken positions in the local industry. AstraZeneca, Eurofins, Novamax, all from Gaithersburg as examples. 40% of our graduates are employed in Maryland, 60% nationwide. And we have, as I said, over 100 students and work with Shady Grove to ensure the opportunities of students from the Montgomery County school systems can further their education in the biotechnology workforce. But, you know, in addition to the lectures and laboratories at Shady Grove, the highlight of our 16-month program is a 6-month industry co-op. The experience fosters technical expertise, critical problem-solving skills, proficiency with cutting-edge tools and methodology. By bridging the gap between academic knowledge and professional practice, the program equips the students with the skills and experience needed to excel in a competitive career environment. It provides the critical connections that are required for any successful partnership, especially in terms of career readiness. Companies and students alike have embraced the co-op, just like you've heard. One of the most successful has been with AstraZeneca. Of the 100 students, 38 have experienced a co-op with AstraZeneca, but also more at other various industries around the state and Montgomery County. And it continues to grow with additional entities. I want to thank you for your support of the universities at Shady Grove. The impact of that investment is clear from the success of the MS in pharmaceutical sciences, and more importantly, the success of our graduates and their impact on Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you all. I don't see any raised hands, so we'll just thank USG for the great work that you do and turn it to Senator Kramer for the next panel.
Thank you. And the next panel includes Chelsea Andrews, followed by Jeffrey Johnson.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Polakovich-Carr, Chair Kramer, and members of the delegation. I am Chelsea Andrews, the president of the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County, Maryland. HOC is our county's public housing authority, helping nearly 20,000 low-income and moderate-income families afford high-quality housing in Montgomery County through our properties and rental assistance vouchers. We are also the county's housing finance agency and the county's public developer. First, I want to thank the delegation for your steadfast support of affordable housing in Montgomery County. In fact, it was just about 50 years ago, in 1974, that the Maryland legislature and Montgomery County Council came together to develop a vision for an independent local housing agency with a broader mission and set of authorities to support development of housing for all Montgomery County residents and make the most of a shrinking pool of federal investment in housing. We don't know what's in store for the federal programs that we've come to rely upon. However, we will be creative and ensure that we get things done with limited resources. We stand ready to be bold and creative and make the most of whatever resources are available. We appreciate knowing that all these decades later, we still have the steadfast support of our partners at both the state and county level, who understand that affordable housing is the foundation of a strong community and are ready to invest. Last year, you helped pass major legislation like Delegate Stewart and Senator Walchester's HB 7, creating a new housing innovation fund, Delegate Polakovich-Carr's MC 324, and Governor Moore's landmark housing package, including enhancements to the new statewide voucher program. This year, we have a list of priorities, but mostly we ask that you do everything you can to protect the funding sources that make affordable housing possible. We are very excited about the redevelopment of Emory Grove in partnership with Montgomery County, Emory Grove United Methodist Church, and we look forward to participating in the proposed task force as well. Finally, in a world with more constrained resources, it is more important than ever to look for ways to make affordable housing less expensive to build. Exemptions from development fees, taxes, and requirements can reduce the need for limited affordable subsidies and make the process more efficient for everyone. I look forward to working with you all this legislative season. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Chair of the Montgomery County Community Action Board. We advocate for economically disadvantaged residents and provide governance to the Community Action Agency and Head Start program. I want to thank the delegation for supporting policies that assist those struggling to meet the self-sufficiency standard. We were pleased to see important legislation like the Enough Act and the Access to Care Act passed last session. Our main priority this year is creating a Community Action Anti-Poverty Fund, which seeks permanent state funding to match the federal Community Services Block Grant funds. This fund is essential, especially as CSBG resources are stagnant. In 2022, Maryland Community Action Agency served 185,548 individuals providing crucial services. Despite its small team, the Montgomery County Community Action Agency successfully offers programs like the Volunteer Assistance Tax Assistance Program, serving over 2,200 households and generating $8.6 million in tax refunds, along with the Test Community Action Center and the agency's navigation team, each of which serves 200 to 300 residents each month. Our board also oversees a free advocacy training program, the Community Advocacy Institute, and I want to take a special moment to thank Delegate Janelle Wilkins and Delegate Carr for participating in our first workshop earlier this month. We asked the delegation to support a community action anti-poverty fund. Our second priority is reinstating funding for the 2-Gen Whole Family Services, which the state eliminated in the FY25 budget. Considered a best practice, this approach addresses the needs of entire households, simplifying access to services, support vital services like case management and diaper distribution for families at our test center. We urge the delegation to support reinstating this funding so that all community action agencies in the state can continue to serve families with the same level of support. We also seek support for expanding the state earned income tax credit and child tax credit. Our VITA program helps residents maximize these credits, connecting them with a nearly $3 million in EITC and over $800,000 in child credits last year. Given Montgomery County's high cost of living, these credits are crucial for many families. We are asking the delegation to continue support in expanding the state EITC to single adults without dependents and enhancing the state child tax credit to reach more families. Thank you for your continued support in helping our communities thrive.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions for either Ms. Andrews or Mr. Johnson, so thank you both.
Right. Our next panel will be Denise Gilmore, Tazeen Aman, Angela Franco, Heidi Rhodes, Seth Grimes, Thomas Jackson, and Darian Unger. And Denise, you can get started, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and good evening, Montgomery County Delegation. My name is Denise Gilmore. I'm the Legislative and Political Director for AFSCME Maryland Council 3. We represent state, county, and municipal employees across Maryland, including non-instructional staff at our USM campuses and at Montgomery College. On behalf of our members who work and live in Montgomery County and statewide, thank you for the opportunity to present some of our legislative priorities in the upcoming session and for all of your support over the years. We know that there will be lots of tough budget decisions in the upcoming year. We hope to work with you and for your continued and that you continue supporting the important public services our members provide daily, and certainly resist temptations to balance the budget on their backs. We're still working on rebuilding our state government after years of neglect under the previous administration. But tonight, I really want to talk about one priority that is of particular importance to our members in Montgomery County. On May 31st this year, parole and probation agent Davis Martinez left his office in Silver Spring and sadly never returned home that night. Tragically, he was killed by a client during a routine home visit in Chevy Chase. Since May, our union has actually lost 3 of our union siblings to line of duty fatalities. Inherently, many public sector jobs are dangerous, but that doesn't mean that tragedies like the fatalities our union has experienced in recent months can't be prevented. With proper planning, training, oversight, and enforcement, we absolutely can prevent these tragedies from happening again. That is why we are committed to passing the Davis-Martinez Public Employee Safety and Health Act this legislative session to improve health and safety across the public sector. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight, and we look forward to working with you to make sure that all of our dedicated public servants can return home in one piece.
Good evening. I'm Tazeen Ahmed, President of the Montgomery County Women's Democratic Club, and I'm pleased to present a summary of our 2025 legislative priorities. WDC supports advancing democracy initiatives, including ranked choice voting, special elections to fill vacancies in the General Assembly, and expanding public financing to state legislative positions. We recognize the needs of our growing senior population and support legislation that ensures their economic security, builds vibrant and affordable communities, promotes healthy aging, and ensures access to compassionate and affordable elder care. We urge investments in our children and youth, addressing the critical shortage of affordable, accessible childcare, and helping students, families, and schools solve chronic absenteeism, a key contributor to negative life outcomes for young people. We support criminal justice reform by addressing inequities at all points of contact with the criminal justice system, eliminating the abuse of human rights, and promoting respectful treatment of all people. We urge the passage of legislation to prevent the forced separation of infants from their incarcerated mothers. WDC urges a stronger focus on environmental protections to move Maryland towards climate resilience. We ask that you enact legislation to accelerate the implementation of the Maryland Climate Pathway Report. We support bills to provide wider access to efficient and affordable healthcare, regardless of gender, race, age, income, or immigration status. We support legislation that addresses reproductive health disparities, especially maternal health and birth outcomes for Black women, and the related rising infant immortality rate. We ask you to invest in Maryland's working families to provide for their economic stability, reduce the gender pay gap, provide fair wages, and improve work practices for essential workers. We support sustained investments in safe, stable, affordable housing for low and moderate income households, and again, urge the passage of a bill to prohibit evictions without just cause from these premises. Our formal report has been submitted. We look forward to working with you this upcoming session in Annapolis. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Montgomery County Delegation. My name is Angela Franco, President and CEO of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. I'm honored to lead the Chamber and collaborate with our elected leaders to support and expand our economy. The Chamber has been working hard to ensure that businesses, nonprofits, and other employers, especially those that are small, disadvantaged, or veteran-owned, are able to thrive in our ever-changing economic landscape. For our testimony tonight, we want to talk about our top priority, creating and maintaining an environment where businesses can grow and prosper. The Chamber urges our partners in Annapolis to always carefully consider the impact on economic growth, job creation, and business competitiveness when making your policy decisions. We ask that you prioritize policies that impact key components of our economy, and this includes our transportation infrastructure. The ability to move people and commerce safely and efficiently through our region is vitally important. Another priority issue is addressing workforce and labor market challenges, which our members consistently report are the most significant impediments to growth and success in our region. Please continue supporting workforce development efforts, including our local leaders in this arena, Montgomery College and the universities at Shady Grove. Also, continuing your efforts to enhance public safety is very important to us. And finally, we understand the state of Maryland's budget is under pressure. We ask that you get behind our employers and employees by opposing harmful policy changes and tax increases. Maryland is a great place to do business, but we continue to face stagnant economic growth. And new threats are emerging, the most notable being a potential reduction or reconfiguration of our federal workforce. We urge delegation members to say no to proposals that harm the ability for Montgomery County to be competitive for jobs and economic activity. We urge instead that delegation focuses on creating a more competitive tax environment, maintaining effective economic development programs, and reducing obstacles for the business community. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify, and know that the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce is here and ready to work with you. Thank you.
And Ms. Rhodes, you're next, please.
Good evening. My name is Heidi Rhodes. I'm a resident of District 14 and the co-chair of Jews United for Justice's Montgomery County Leadership Council. JUFJ organizes 6,000 Jewish Marylanders and allies to advocate for social, racial, and economic justice at the state and local level. This year's hearing comes shortly after an election where messages of fear and division dominated. For those of us dedicated to a thriving multiracial democracy, we feel the urgency of telling another story. These moments remind us of the famous quote from Pierre Vote, which is on the back of our JFJ shirts that reads, "It is not on you to finish the work, but you can't quit either." As we head towards the legislative session, JFJ will continue our work alongside coalition partners to dismantle anti-Semitism through solidarity, defend communities most likely to be targeted by policies under a second Trump administration, and strengthen our movements for social, economic, and racial justice. Our three MGDA 25 priorities are: 1, everybody regardless of race or income deserves a safe and stable home. We join our partners at Renters United Maryland in urging you to pass good cause evictions legislation, enabling local jurisdictions to implement protections that would prevent unjust and arbitrary evictions. 2, children who encounter our state's criminal legal system deserve a chance to learn and grow rather than be discarded and punished. We join our partners at the Maryland Youth Justice Coalition in supporting legislation to end the automatic charging of kids as young as 14 as adults. Finally, Maryland needs a fairer tax system to raise the revenue needed to build a state that works for everyone, especially as Maryland faces a huge budget deficit. We join our partners at the Maryland Fair Share Coalition in supporting the Fair Share for Maryland plan so that instead of implementing regressive taxes or cuts to key programs, giant corporations and the wealthiest 1% pay their fair share for the things we all care about, like healthcare and education. Your leadership and partnership on these issues in the coming weeks, months, and years would be critical. Thank you.
Go ahead, Seth.
Thank you, Chair Polakovich-Carr. Thank you also, Chair Kramer and members of the Montgomery County Delegation. I am Seth Grimes. I'm Maryland organizer with the Washington Area Bicyclist Association, which is a regional nonprofit that envisions a just and sustainable transportation system where walking, biking, and transit are the best ways to get around. We ask you to consider 4 transportation-related state legislative priorities. The first will surprise you, coming from me, from WABA. It reflects our work as part of the Transform Maryland Transportation Coalition and other work. We ask you to ensure adequate and sustained transit, capital, and operational funding for WMATA and for the Maryland Transit Administration, noting Baltimore needs, and forward-looking capital investment in Southern Maryland rapid transit. Reverting to bicycling, you're surely aware of the Ride for Your Life that took place yesterday with probably around 500 riders. Many of you participated. That is about the need for safety. Montgomery County in the year to date has suffered 44 fatalities on our roads, including 15 pedestrians. This has to end. We need protected bicycling infrastructure. I have altered our testimony from please restore funding cuts that MDOT proposed to preserve the funding at the levels they proposed for the Kim Lanphier Bikeways Network program, for the MDOT Complete Streets program, which is really important to transforming our region streets. Finally, we ask you to enact bicycle, pedestrian, and road safety legislation, most of which is low or no cost. Some of you have cooperated and helped us with introducing this legislation. You'll hear more from us in the hearing in a few weeks on local bills and during the legislative session. So thank you for your support for bicycling, active transportation, pedestrian, and road safety.
Good evening, members of the delegation. My name is Thomas Jackson, and I am the membership director representing the Montgomery County Young Democrats, or MCYD. In the upcoming legislative session, we urge the legislature to prioritize economic justice, housing justice, meaningful climate action, reproductive justice, and immigrant protections. We support a tax system that ensures the wealthiest people and corporations pay their fair share. We urge you to pass the Fair Share for Maryland Act, which would raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% of Marylanders and close corporate tax loopholes, raising over $1.6 billion in revenue for our state. This money could be used to fully fund schools through the Blueprint for Maryland's Future and also support healthcare and transportation, including the proposed Red Line in Baltimore, among other critical services. We support efforts to build more housing across the state, including repealing or modifying zoning restrictions so missing middle housing can be built in appropriate places. Good cause eviction, which requires landlords to provide sound reasons before they can evict tenants, is an excellent bill that we hope you will support next year. If we are serious about combating climate change, new infrastructure projects must be of smarter and cleaner design. This includes improving energy conservation standards and making electric vehicle charging stations available where parking is provided. We encourage the delegation to support the Better Buildings Act. Further, we implore the delegation to support and increase security grants for reproductive health clinics to ensure that our commitment to reproductive justice is felt by those who need it most. Finally, the incoming Trump administration has made clear its intentions to enact harmful policies that would terrorize both documented and undocumented immigrants. State and local law enforcement should not be complicit in empowering overreaches of immigration and customs enforcement to detain and deport immigrants, especially with no cause. Maryland should oppose any mass deportation attempts of people who have chosen our great state as a place to pursue a better life. Please feel free to contact us at moco.com with any questions, and thank you so much for your time.
Go ahead, Mr. Unger.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks very much for all of your work. My name is Darian Unger, and I'm chair of the Montgomery County Sierra Club. During the upcoming session, the Maryland Sierra Club will again support many statewide bills to benefit the environment and promote social equity. Our priorities this year will include the Transportation Climate Alignment Act, which will improve planning for major highway projects so that they explicitly consider vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gases. Also, the Maryland Bottle Bill, which would institute a deposit refund system similar to the ones that used in tens of other states to reduce the burden of litter and trash on the environment and on local governments. And also legislation to support the growth of abundant and affordable clean energy like solar and offshore wind and move Maryland away from dirty fossil polluting sources of energy, which is now more important than ever given the frighteningly growing burden that data centers threaten to place on our power generation and distribution systems. But tonight, I would also like to share with you two of our local environmental priorities for the upcoming session, which complement the larger statewide ones. One local priority is improving the development review process in Montgomery County. We appreciate Delegate Lopez's leadership in chairing the development review process work group last year. Unfortunately, as you know, development review is often skewed towards powerful interests to the detriment of public interest, community input, and environmental priorities. And we've been disappointed in outcomes that diminish the tree canopy, water quality, and pedestrian safety in Montgomery County. We ask the delegation stay engaged in your oversight role. We also recommend legislation to transfer responsibility for streetscape decisions like lighting and trees to Montgomery County from the SHA to local governments. That'll streamline the process and result in better outcomes for pedestrian safety. Honestly, we'd rather have a full support of for transfer of control of state roads to the county, but this would be a good way to start. So our entire executive committee and our thousands of members look forward to working with you in the upcoming weeks and months. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do not see any virtual hands raised, so I will just thank these witnesses for their testimony.
And for the next panel, we have the following three individuals, Sharon Deach, Mary Renderos, and Katrina Kugel, all of whom will have 2 minutes. So Sharon Deach, please.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Sharon Dici. I'm the Executive Director of NAMI Montgomery County, which is National Alliance on Mental Illness for Montgomery County. We are the largest grassroots mental health organization in the country. Regarding the state budget, I'm here to advocate for the Montgomery County delegation to address the critical need for psychiatric beds, most specifically for those individuals in correctional settings. By law, Maryland must transfer individuals to a state hospital within 10 days of a court-appointed competency restoration. This is not happening. Both Baltimore and Anne Arundel County have filed contempt cases and were awarded monetary judgments against the state because of the noncompliance. In October, I myself, along with my advocacy co-chairs and Delegate David Moon, met with staff at the Montgomery County Detention Center. They verified to us that over 40 individuals are waiting to be transferred to a state psychiatric hospital, and that has been taking anywhere from 3 to 6 months for the transfer to occur. When we toured the mental health unit, it was very troubling and heartbreaking to see the detainees languishing rather than getting the medical services they need to recover and heal. While I know that the state budget is tight and there are many competing priorities, I would like to remind the elected officials of the parity requirement. I do want to caution that while there is a need for more psychiatric beds, NAMI MC is not advocating a return to the era of mass institutionalization. While getting additional beds is a legal and moral imperative, we advocate for a concerted effort to build the community and diversion resources that will allow individuals with severe mental illness to better manage their lives in the community and minimize episodes that may warrant hospitalization. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Renderos.
My name's Mary Renderos. I'm the Chief of Staff at Jubilee Association of Maryland. Jubilee supports adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Montgomery County with residential and housing support services. Thank you for the opportunity to share our priorities on behalf of more than 200 people we support, countless family members, and 500 staff. And thank you for your ongoing commitment to home and community-based services in Maryland. We appreciate the leadership of many of you on this delegation on budget and appropriation matters that impact your most vulnerable constituents. Most of Jubilee's home and community-based services are funded through the DDA budget and Medicaid reimbursements. While we acknowledge Maryland's budget crisis and federal uncertainty, we ask the state to adequately fund essential IDD services. We hope you will continue progress towards fully funding the rates needed to sustain our services along with inflationary increases. Jubilee services promote choice in housing and community inclusion for people with disabilities. We're so grateful for the investment in the MDH budget for the new Developmental Disabilities Rent Subsidy Program. The first vouchers were issued this past year, and we were able to support 7 people in finding homes of their choice, including a woman who is at risk of homelessness. We encourage protecting the funding for these issued vouchers and potentially expanding it to reach additional recipients. Jubilee is also dedicated to working with the state to address the direct support professional workforce crisis. The Academy at Jubilee, our new workforce development and training center, provides high-quality in-person training, which reduces DSP turnover and improves the quality of services. Thank you to the General Assembly and especially our District 18 delegation for championing this work. As part of the end of the waitlist law to reduce the backlog of Marylanders waiting for disability services, last year $10 million was set aside for provider capacity building, but was removed from the budget earlier this year. Given the drastic need for skilled DSPs, we recommend restoring some of this important funding. Thank you.
Katrina Kugel.
Hi, my name is Katrina Kugel from SEEK. We are a Montgomery County-based nonprofit that supports adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDD. Thank you for allowing me to speak and for this delegation's continued support. We support over 360 adults with disabilities and employ over 150 DSPs, or direct support professionals. We also partner with over 250 employers who hire people we support, including Zinnia in Silver Spring, who recently hired Sarah as a tabletop quality manager. In fact, our employment rate is over 60%, or 3 times the national average. And combined, the people we support have annual earnings of over $3.9 million. Many of you saw firsthand the benefit of employment in the community when you participated in Take Your Legislator to Work Day. Thank you. I understand the budget situation is challenging, to say the least. However, Maryland has the 3rd longest wait list for home and community-based services, yet we are only the 18th in terms of population. There are also hundreds of transitioning youth across the state who have not been able to start DDA services due to delays. In addition, there is new uncertainty around federal Medicaid funding, and in terms of inflation, the Consumer Price Index for the DC area is 3.7%. We just ask that you keep all these pressures in mind when it comes to funding these critical services. We have worked diligently to hire and cultivate an amazing DSP workforce. Rodney, a DSP2 and 2023 Maryland DSP of the Year, worked with a man who did not want to leave his home, but loved coffee. So Rodney showed him the Starbucks drinks menu, and now the person we support, who is nonverbal, places his own order. These DSPs make it possible for the people we support to live full lives in the community. However, the 2022 turnover rate for DSPs in Maryland was 33%, a rate that limits DSPs' ability to meet the needs of the people they support successfully and safely. We must invest in these services. Please let me know if you're planning any legislation that affects people with disabilities. I'm always happy to collaborate, arrange for witnesses, as we're regularly in touch with other organizations. We hope to see many of you during DD Day. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't see any questions for this panel, so thank you all very much.
Thank you. And calling up our next panel, which consists of Olivia Spicazzi, Michelle Kennedy Cuadio, Bruce Turnbill, Jordy Diaz, Robert Landau, Susan Karen, Zakia Sankara Jabbar, and Carol Sachowski. And I'm sorry for anyone's names who I mispronounced, but Olivia, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Olivia Spicazzi. I'm the Public Policy Program Associate at the ACLU of Maryland. I was also born and raised right here in Montgomery County. I'm here today to urge the delegation to support the Maryland Second Look Act, which will be reintroduced this year. The bill, which is supported by a diverse coalition of advocates, returning citizens, and impacted family members from around the state, would allow anyone who has served 20 years in prison to petition the court to modify or reduce their sentence based on demonstrated rehabilitation. Currently, this is the only way for someone serving an extreme sentence to have their sentence reviewed. The only way for someone to have their sentence reviewed if they're serving an extreme sentence is by challenging the constitutionality of the conviction itself. Maryland judges used to have the ability to review sentences, but this process was eliminated through a rule change in 2004. We also urge the delegation to resist amendments that categorically exclude certain crimes from this opportunity. No two crimes are the same, and excluding certain crimes whole cloth ignores the nuances within the legal system, like the cases of criminalized survivors, cases of overcharging, the outcomes of someone choosing a trial over a plea deal, and the outcomes of jurisdictional differences in prosecution and sentencing practices. This bill would not constitute an automatic release for anyone. Judges would be empowered to consider a variety of factors in these hearings, including a victim's impact statement. And if a judge feels strongly that someone's release would be inappropriate, they're able to make that decision. The bill provides an essential opportunity for review of extreme sentences and serves as an incentive for people to take accountability while inside. The mass incarceration crisis is evident in Maryland. Our state must take bold steps towards decarceration and move away from the shameful lock them up and throw away the key mentality that has resulted in Maryland leading the nation in sentencing young Black men to the longest prison terms at a rate 55% higher than the nearest state, Mississippi. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to continuing to work with many of you to push this bill forward and create a justice system that centers humanity and redemption. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, you're next.
Yes, hi. Thank you for your time. As a Montgomery County homeowner and taxpayer, and as part of the Maryland Alliance for Justice Reform advocate, I'm providing the following statement to support the Second Look Act. Over 60% of the 16,000 people incarcerated in Maryland prisons are serving over 15 years for violent crimes. When people in prison are first eligible for parole, most hardly understand the parole process, nor how to prepare themselves for a first parole hearing or a subsequent hearing that might not take place for a few years later. For several years, people eligible for a parole hearing are not allowed to have an attorney representing their case, nor to be present at their parole hearing. This has resulted in a negligible release rate for long-term sentence offenders at their first or subsequent parole hearing. In contrast, under the Second Look Act, MAJOR, the Maryland Alliance for Justice Reform, and many other partner organizations would collaborate with and engage entities to provide the legal assistance necessary for a proper judicial review, one that is more likely to result in a release after 20 years instead of 30 or 40 years. Moreover, a reduced sentence would be less burdensome financially for the families and the state of Maryland taxpayers. Some people in prison maintain their innocence and so would not accept a plea deal. Most accepted a plea deal, resulting in a long-term sentence. Today, rulings and sentencing for various violent crimes are being judged with a more transparent and enlightened legal lens, one that makes greater use of science and technological advancement. Passing the Second Look Act will help alleviate the overstressed public safety and corrections, human and facility resources. And most importantly, a vote to support the Second Look Act would be a step for Maryland citizens that wish to inspire hope for those incarcerated and with a fair legal assisted review after serving 20 years. Thank you for your time, and I pass.
Thank you. Bruce, you're next.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Turnbull, and I live in Bethesda in District 16. Thank you for the opportunity to appear to urge the delegation and each individual member to support legislation to be introduced by Senator Sarah Love and Delegate N. Scott Phillips to limit the use of restrictive housing in Maryland's state-run prisons. I appear as a volunteer advocate on behalf of Interfaith Action for Human Rights. The average length of stay in Maryland's prisons for restrictive housing, Maryland's term for solitary confinement, is 42 consecutive days. The United Nations has found that any stay beyond 15 consecutive days is torture. In Colorado, the head of the state-run prison system voluntarily put himself in solitary and had to come out after only 20 hours because he found it so difficult. He vowed to eliminate or restrict the use of solitary in Colorado, and that happened, as it has in a number of other states. And we can do the same here in Maryland. It is really quite straightforward. The bill we are supporting would do 4 things: establish time limits for the use of restrictive housing, prohibit the use of restrictive housing for certain vulnerable classes of people. Before a person can be placed in restrictive housing, other than the vulnerable ones, require a finding that a person has been found to have injured or killed another person while incarcerated or threatened imminent injury or death to another person, and establish minimal due process procedures and findings that must occur before a person may be placed in restrictive housing. The bill is supported by a broad-based coalition led by Interfaith Action. Again, the average length of stay in restrictive housing in Maryland's prisons is 42 consecutive days. We urge this delegation to make passage of this legislation a priority for the 2025 session and for each of you to co-sponsor and lend your active support to its passage. Thank you.
Jordy, go ahead, and to be followed by Robert.
Good evening. My name is Jordy Diaz, a resident of District 16, and I am an organizer for Young People for Progress, a civic and social justice organization of youth and young adults in Montgomery County. We strongly urge your support for the upcoming Safer Traffic Stops for All bill to create a more equitable traffic enforcement system. This bill reclassifies minor traffic infractions as secondary offenses, meaning police officers cannot stop drivers solely for these infractions, such as expired registration tags. The goal is to reduce unnecessary traffic stops that disproportionately impact marginalized communities and divert law enforcement resources for more serious safety concerns. As an organization rooted in the experiences of young people of color, we know the harms caused by minor traffic stops. These encounters often lead to fear, financial hardship, and unnecessary escalation. Data shows that these stops disproportionately target Black and Brown drivers. From 2018 to 2022, Black drivers made up 30% of traffic stops, and Latinx drivers 21%, despite comprising only 18 and 19% of the county's population. These disparities heighten the risk of harm, as interactions with police during traffic stops can escalate unnecessarily, placing drivers in situations of stress, fear, and even violence. Moreover, these stops are largely ineffective in addressing public safety. In 2022, firearms were recovered in less than 0.5% of traffic stops in Montgomery County. This shows that focusing on minor infractions diverts valuable law enforcement resources from addressing genuinely dangerous violations. The approach proposed in this bill has been proven to work. Fayetteville, North Carolina, deprioritized minor traffic stops and instead focused on serious safety violations, resulting in decreased racial disparities in traffic enforcement without compromising public safety outcomes. This demonstrates that we can adopt smarter, fairer traffic enforcement practices that focus on what truly matters, keeping our roads safe. Passing this bill is a critical step in addressing long-standing disparities in our traffic enforcement system. It will help reduce harm to marginalized communities, rebuild trust in law enforcement, and ensure our county's policies reflect the values of fairness, safety, and equity. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robert Landau. The Silver Spring Justice Coalition has two priorities this legislative session: reducing police involvement in mental health crisis response and in low-level traffic enforcement. We are outraged by how often police in Montgomery County and around the state shoot and kill men who are clearly having mental health crises. There have been 20 police killings in Montgomery County since 2010 and 60 Attorney General investigations statewide and police-involved deaths since 2021. SSJC has been fighting to expand the use of mental health crisis teams to prevent the kinds of killings that I've just documented. And by having a mental health crisis team of a clinician and a peer support person, that can help. We call upon you to enact legislation that will fund government and non-government organizations to promote alternatives like those in New Orleans in order to save lives and provide compassionate, trauma-informed care in times of crisis. We're also excited to join a coalition of organizations led by the Maryland Office of the Public Defender to support the Safer Traffic Stops Act, which would prohibit officers from stopping drivers for an enumerated list of equipment violations and low-level traffic infractions that do not pose a threat to driver safety. The state law will do what our county STEP Act was unable to do because of state law preemption. In Montgomery County, civil rights activists, traffic safety activists, national criminal experts, and others testified in support of the County STEP Act because they all agreed that reducing low-level traffic stops decreases race-based discrimination and traffic enforcement while increasing traffic safety. Similar legislation has been passed in Virginia and across the nation, which decreases race-based disparities with no negative effects. Moreover, polling by the Vera Institute of Justice shows that these types of laws enjoy support of a majority of voters across the political spectrum. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Next, Susan, to be followed by Carol.
Great. Thank you and good evening. My name is Susan Karen, and I'm the chair of Peace Action Montgomery. A little bit about us. We have 1,500 members and are part of Peace Action National, which is the largest grassroots peace network in the nation. In terms of local accomplishments, we helped to get the Back to the Brink nuclear disarmament resolution passed in the county. We successfully blocked Lockheed Martin's request to local officials for a hotel tax break. We exposed the increasing role of the Hindu fascist movement in Maryland politics, and we organized the county's first ACEs Trauma-Informed Care Conference. This year, we have one budget request, and the state's annual grant to the Maryland Israel Development Center, or MIDC. They get about $275,000 a year. That isn't a lot, but that funds can be used to help others, such as families being evicted from the enclave. It would be life-changing for them. Our website has a short 3-minute video about our concerns with the MIDC, but essentially they have been bringing in weapon manufacturers to our state, and 2 of them, Rafa and Elta, are not even privately owned, but are actually government-owned and part of the Israeli military itself. And now there is evidence that Maryland, because of the grant, is directly implicated in a war crime. In October, Israel dropped a bomb on a 10-story apartment building in Beirut. Photos showed that it was a US-made bomb with the SPICE guidance system, which is built by Raphael. The MIDC brought Raphael to Bethesda to help them broker these type of relationships. This is a quote from President Biden. Don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value. A main reason that my organization has been successful is because we live in a county that understands our message and values human rights. The MIDC has not mirrored these foundational values. Please stop this grant.
Go ahead, Carol.
My name is Carol Chakowski, and I live in Montgomery County. I am here tonight because I also am concerned about the large number of Maryland prisoners who are disproportionately Black and are serving excessive sentences without meaningful opportunities for release. I am concerned about the enormous costs human, social, and economic, of keeping people locked up long after the state has achieved the purposes of incarceration. I see mass incarceration primarily as a reflection of choices Maryland has made about how to respond to crime, how to police, charge, and sentence people. Although we can't undo the harm that has already occurred due to flawed approaches to public safety, you can limit future harm by passing the Second Look Act, which would restore a much needed opportunity for judicial review for people serving extreme sentences. Your actions to date show that you believe people who have committed serious crimes can change. You passed the Juvenile Restoration Act in 2021, which gave individuals convicted as minors an opportunity for resentencing. Last session, you passed the Second Look Act in the Senate, and 4 of you were co-sponsors of the House bill. Thank you for your support. Your support shows your previous support was well placed. Research on crime and aging and data on recidivism tells us that people who have committed the most serious crimes and have served long sentences are unlikely to reoffend if released. Tonight, I'm asking you to marshal the considerable evidence that supports this change in the law and take action that recognizes the humanity of many people behind the walls who have worked for decades to rehabilitate and improve themselves and are ready to show a judge that they can contribute to their communities if released. Please give them hope by giving them a second chance. Thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight.
Thank you. And just confirming that Sakia Sankara Jabbar, I don't believe is in the Zoom room. So that is all of our witnesses for this panel. And I don't see any raised hands. So thank you all for your testimony. Turning it over to you, Senator Kramer. So Senator, you are on mute.
And thank you for that, Madam Chair. Coming up is my friend Kathy Bernard, followed by Monica Jeffries, and then Katie Berner. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kathy Bernard. I'm on the board of Strathmore, and I'm here to ask you to fund a new roof. Strathmore was built in 2005, and a membrane roof was put on the building. They don't really make those kind of roofs anymore, but typical of government, they put on a new roof, but they didn't take care of it. Membrane roofs have to be sealed every 3 to 5 years, and that never happened. So guess what? We have leaks, and Strathmore is a pretty important building for our county. So having leaks in the roof is not a great thing. And we're asking you, we asked last year, but we were told that this year we could probably get on the list. We are on the county list. And unfortunately, it's a $4 million ask because it's a very big building. So we're here to ask, hopefully to get in the governor's budget. But our Strathmore is such a premier part. We also serve Baltimore. So it's not just for Montgomery County, because the Baltimore Symphony, obviously their second home is Strathmore. So we're here to ask for the roof. I'm sorry that it's so much money, but that's what things cost, because having a leaky roof in our premier arts facility is probably not a good thing. So I won't take up more of your time, but I've talked to many of you, and I hope that you will understand that while it's not sexy and it's expensive, we need a new roof. So I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica Jeffries.
Good evening, delegation chairs Kramer and Polakovich-Carr, vice chairs Kelly and Shetty, and delegation members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Monica Jeffries, Los Angeles President, CEO of Strathmore. I want to thank you for the high value you place on the arts and humanities as legislative priorities. It's vitally important to the health of our sector. I'm here this evening to advocate on behalf of Montgomery County government's request for capital support for the Music Center at Strathmore. We're grateful for your initial support of this project in FY25. Now, the county is seeking a second tranche of funding to replace the Music Center's roof. Having worked together to build the Music Center nearly 20 years ago, Strathmore, Montgomery County, and the Maryland General Assembly remain committed to ensuring its long-term viability for all Marylanders. As you know, the Music Center is the second home for the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, home to 10 other nonprofit arts partners, and is one of the state's valued cultural institutions. The Music Center hosts countless Maryland arts treasures and is deeply committed to arts education and community engagement. 12,000 little second graders are visiting for free concerts this week. Strathmore and Montgomery County have taken great care of this remarkable asset, keeping pace with the demands of most capital repairs. Now, however, we must address a few large systems that are diminished, including the roof. It has deteriorated in recent years and leaks are now more frequent. Important upgrades to the capital equipment systems are also required. While we have invested significantly in preventive maintenance and upgrades, several of these major elements need attention. We respectfully request that you include the Music Center roof replacement and systems improvements in the FY26 budget to ensure the Music and Education Center remains state-of-the-art for generations to come. Thank you so much for all you do for Strathmore and for the arts in our community.
Thank you. Katie Berner.
Hi, I'm Katie Berner, CEO of the Glen Echo Park Partnership, here with my partner in crime, Rhonda Keys, board president. The Spanish Ballroom at Glen Echo Park is a cultural landmark from the Art Deco period that is nationally recognized for its programs and historic significance, and is home to thousands of dancers and live music performances all year round. Annual park visitation is 250,000. The dance program currently offers 325 dances annually, serving 45,000 people. The park is managed through a partnership between the federal government, Montgomery County, and our nonprofit. This project has the benefit of leveraging partner funding toward a total cost of $10.2 million. County and federal partners have pledged $3.25 million each. The request from the state of Maryland is $2.5 million. An additional $1 million will be raised from private sources.
Project goals are preservation of the facility, improved visitor experience, and better venue operation, with the major change being the installation of a heating and cooling system, which will help preserve the floor and ensure year-round usage. The venue will be used by more people throughout the year as a result of these improvements. As a former amusement park and important site of civil rights activism, the park is here for everyone to enjoy today. This project helps achieve that vision. We welcome cultural groups from throughout the region who celebrate through dance and music. Participants benefit both physically and mentally while building strong community bonds. Current programs will see an increase in participation and better comfort, access, and safety for participants and performers. Through improvement and reuse of an existing historic facility, this project fosters maximum impact for community benefit. Thank you for your support of Glen Echo Park.
Thank you, and I see no questions for this panel, so thank you all very much.
Turning to our next panel, we have Gabriela Lamas, Jason Spiegel, Kevin Doxey, Javier Rivas, and Angie McCarthy. I don't see Gabriela in the Zoom, so Jason, if you would like to start, please go ahead.
Sure. I'm Jason Spiegel, the president of the Maryland Military Coalition and a resident of District 17. One of our goals is to build upon Governor Moore's Keep Our Heroes Home Act and phase in the elimination of state taxation of military retirement pay. Governor Moore's vision is to make Maryland the best state in the nation to live after military service. But to achieve the governor's goal, Maryland needs to join the 38 states that do not tax military retired pay. Significantly, all our neighboring states exempt more retirement pay from state taxation than we do. Exempting military retirement pay is an investment in Maryland's future. Statistics from the Department of Defense demonstrate that the number of military retirees living in Maryland is decreasing, while the number is growing exponentially in states like North Carolina that do not tax retirement pay. Service members retire when they are in their early 40s to 50s. Their second careers with their taxable civilian salaries can range from 15 to 25 years. The taxation of a military retiree's second career plus that of a working spouse will offset the cost of exempting retirement pay. However, when military retirees move to states that don't tax their retirement pay, we lose the tax revenue generated by their second career and their spouse's income. We fully recognize the revenue shortfall in Maryland, but as the governor has said, increasing the exemption will incentivize retirees to stay in Maryland and spur economic growth. We urge you to build upon the governor's Keep Our Heroes Home Act and phase in full exemption over a multi-year period. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, you can proceed next.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to provide remarks protecting veterans for claim predators. Today, I have the honor to speak on behalf of myself as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business and the president of Montgomery County Military Officers Association of America. There is a growing number of unaccredited for-profit companies that are now offering claim assistance in violation of federal law, and in some cases requiring veterans to disclose both their VA and online banking user ID and password. So the claims predator can track the progress of the claim and withdraw funds it deems are due. With the passage of the PAC Act, I observed an increase in online advertisement from predatory claim consultants, often referred to as claim sharks, that target veterans' earned VA benefits. These groups promise to increase veterans' VA disability ratings. However, many of these unaccredited consultants use contracts that include a commitment by the veteran to pay the claim shark all or a significant portion of the increased benefit. If a veteran receives a disability percentage increase years later through working with a VA accredited veteran service organization, many of these companies often return seeking more money. Currently, these predatory companies have no accountability, no oversight, and no penalties. Regulating these type of entities is universally accepted to protect the public from unscrupulous and unqualified actors. So the simple solution is to require these companies be accredited. Anything that can be done to help regulate unaccredited claim companies would significantly decrease the exploitation of vulnerable Montgomery County veterans. No veteran of the uniformed service should be forced to pay for the benefit assistance they are due. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter. And
Thank
sorry,
you.
I don't have a good video. I don't know what was wrong, but thank you.
No worries. The audio came through just fine. Next will be Javier, to be followed by Angie.
Good evening. My name is Javier Rivas, and I am Executive Director of the Tacoma-Langley Crossroads Development Authority, a business association active since 1987, responsible for addressing and advocating for the safety of our 200 businesses and their patrons. Tonight, I want to share our board's concern regarding the power that the Alcohol Beverage Services, or ABS Board of Licensing, has to shape the development and future of predominantly Black and Brown neighborhoods. Our aim is not to limit that authority, but to add transparency and equity to the process by including clear language and guidelines for the licensing commissioners when addressing community voices during hearings. If an applicant for the sale of a controlled substance can hire lobbyists that offer existing relationships with ABS commissioners and staff, then place-based service institutions and neighbors should have assurances that their lived experience and direct knowledge of neighborhood conditions weigh just as much as this paid expertise, materials, and representation. This summer, I presented to ABS licensing commissioners our board's resolution to oppose the issuance of a sixth license for carry-out alcohol sales in a quarter-mile radius. Our board based their vote on existing conditions affecting the safety and security of the staff and patrons of our businesses, market oversaturation, and overwhelming residential opposition. While I had been previously informed by ABS staff that testimony was not time limited, I was asked to rush through my testimony. At the hearing continuation a month later, I was unable to present supporting materials, and other community members were excluded from sharing their opposition. Similar experiences at hearings have been reported by other community development institutions, including Montgomery Housing Partners and Long Branch. I've shared my concern with Delegate Charkoudian that Maryland Code does not establish clear and consistent guidelines for addressing relevant community input and data. I welcome the involvement of other District 20 delegates. You can reach me at 202-400-0193 or javier@tacomalangley.org so I can offer more details and discuss potential solutions. Thank you.
And go ahead, Angie.
Thank you for providing the opportunity to talk about responsible data center regulation. And thank you in particular to Delegate Charkoudian for your continued leadership on this issue. I'm Angie McCarthy, and I'm the Maryland Conservation Advocate at Nature Forward. Data centers are integral to our daily life, but as we've learned from our Northern Virginia neighbors, allowing them by right development leads to drastic energy, water, and land impacts. This is an environmental justice issue. We need common sense regulation to weed out the lowest common denominator developer. I'd like to present 3 figures for your edification. 1, the energy demands of a single data center could power 50,000 homes. Solar and wind cannot keep up with their 24/7 energy needs, thus coal plants stay online to meet their consumption. 2, in Louisa County, Virginia, an Amazon data center uses 620,000 gallons of water every day. We are in a historic drought in Maryland. 3, the Maryland OPC put out a report that found that electric bills in Maryland could increase up to 24% due to data center energy demand. This is coming at a cost of living crisis where so many Marylanders are already struggling to pay their bills. Everyone needs data centers. However, your constituents need you to make sure that data centers are built responsibly with community input and long-term planning. Do not allow by right data center development. Require that data centers are not built near metro centers where we desperately need housing and other public goods. After the passage of HB 579 last General Assembly, diesel generators were allowed to provide backup power. Diesel pollution increases the risk of lung cancer, cardiovascular disease, and asthma. Please require generous setbacks so residents don't breathe in fumes. And finally, consider installing reporting requirements such as the EU's EED so we can better understand what resources are used so we can plan for a better future. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with you all during this General Assembly to put in safeguards around data center development for Montgomery County and beyond.
Thank you. And just calling again, Gabriela Lemus. Don't believe she has logged into the Zoom. And so I'll just note for the couple of witnesses we've missed so far, if they do turn up later in the evening, we will work them into the schedule. I don't see any raised hands, so I will thank the witnesses from this panel and we can move on to the next.
Thank you. And the next panel is comprised of Val Davis, Ricky Ribeiro, Sandra Landis, and Tiffany Kelly. So Val Davis, please get us started.
I'm here to ask that all of you support the proposal to establish in law a full-time Board of Education in Montgomery County, HB 993, by Delegates Charkoudian and Vogel. This is a matter of practicality and equity. Montgomery County's Board of Education is responsible for selecting and directing leaders who manage a budget that is the size of a small country, over $3 billion. That is not a part-time endeavor. Candidates for the board must currently have another job, retirement income, spousal income, spendable wealth, or childcare in order to take a position that requires much more than a 40-hour week and pays less than minimum wage. That is not reasonable or equitable. For the more than 50 years that I have lived in Montgomery County, our public school system has failed to educate African American and Black students, and the instructional gaps are widening. Fixing that is not a part-time job. There are 2 inconvenient truths of the matter for the Black Coalition for Excellence in Education, representing nearly 800 Black students, family members, MCPS staff, and community supporters. Number 1, every indication is that the ongoing destruction of affirmative action, combined with the onslaught against public education, will require all hands, minds, bodies, and wills on deck to contain the damage and craft workarounds. Our Board of Education must be fully dedicated to the work. Secondly, it is highly likely that without making board seats economically accessible to more non-privileged, non-wealthy candidates, Black County residents will not have representation in that government entity that shapes our children's futures, our county's tax base, and local leadership talent pool. That is not a future that any of us should find acceptable. So please support the bill and take the necessary steps to help our county council to fund it. There's too much at stake to do otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, Ricky Ribeiro, please.
Hi, I'm with the Black Coalition for Excellence in Education, and I'm here to testify in support of Delegate Charkoudian's bill to convert the Board of Education into a full-time status and compensation. Montgomery County Public Schools are too vast and too complex to be managed on a part-time basis. The Board of Education is tasked with policymaking, oversight, and interventions on a part-time basis of a school system that supports 211 schools, roughly 160,000 students, 25,000 employees, and a $3 billion budget. Expecting optimal results in a system of this size and scope on a part-time basis is unrealistic and has resulted in countless costly systemic failures. The board is actually already full-time in practice. The board recently did a study in July that looked at how much time Board of Education members spend doing their work, and it found, quote, that many board members are averaging 40 hours of work per week, routinely taking on after-hours calls and emails, and juggling an average of 455 calendar items during the school year. Making the Board of Education full-time wouldn't be changing reality. It would actually allow us to stop pretending that it is something else. Lastly, other jurisdictions are recognizing school board work as full-time. In Los Angeles, board members are able to serve in a full-time capacity and receive compensation accordingly. Our neighbors in Fairfax County Public Schools, which is a system of similar scope and scale, recently increased compensation for board members in 2023 to reflect the full-time nature of the job. Board member Laura Jane Cohen was quoted as saying, "When we have a salary of $32,000 a year and say this is a part-time job, it sends a message that is not accurate. The expectation from our constituents is that we will be available at all times. As you know, Montgomery County residents have very high expectations. It's almost impossible for board members to meet those expectations without making their role as board members their sole and primary focus." Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Sandra Landis. Okay, just need you unmute.
Got it. Okay, sorry about that. I thought you guys were doing the muting. Okay, good evening. My name is Sandra Landis, and I'm challenged with tech. I'm also the Montgomery County chapter leader of Start School Later, a national organization dedicated to ensuring school start times compatible with health, safety, education, and equity. I simultaneously serve as the Bell Times Subcommittee Chair of the MCC-PTA Health and Wellness Committee. Over 3 decades of study have shown that nearly every problem confronting public schools relative to teenagers improves when secondary school bell times begin no earlier than 8:30 a.m., from increases in graduation rates to decreases in teenage death. Most private schools start later, so the consequence of early bell times falls disproportionately on public school students. I'm here tonight seeking a Democratic co-sponsor for your colleague, Delegate April Miller, Republican of Frederick County, when she reintroduces House Bill 1418 entitled Public Middle and High Schools Start Time for Instruction Requirement in the upcoming session of the Maryland General Assembly. The bill is modeled after legislation successfully enacted statewide in both California and Florida. For those of you who may not be familiar with this issue, in adolescence, teen circadian rhythms are delayed, making it extremely difficult for teens to fall asleep prior to 11 p.m. and wake up prior to 8 a.m. Adolescents need 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Medical Association, Centers for Disease Control, and a whole litany in nearly every medical group in the country. To make matters worse, the higher level brain development in the areas of reasoning, problem solving, good judgment, and impulse control develop toward the end of the sleep cycle, which is precisely when we are now waking them up for school. This is leading to documented catastrophic personal and societal consequences in the areas of health, safety, school performance, and crime. The 2 leading causes of teenage death are suicide and morning automobile accidents. Please join with your colleagues to sponsor and enact House Bill 1418.
Thank you. And the last person on this panel, Tiffany Kelly, please.
Chair Kramer, I don't believe she is in the Zoom room.
All righty then. I don't see any questions for this panel, so thank you all very much.
Thank you. And moving to our next panel, we have Matt Losak, Tim Huang, and Emily Toey. Matt Losak is not in the Zoom room, so Tim, if you would like to proceed, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Tim, and I'm a resident of Rockville, and I just wanted to put on the radar the amount of evictions that are going on in the county of Montgomery County. It's before when there was COVID rent relief, the evictions were manageable, but now that there's no more emergency rent assistance money, we're seeing evictions skyrocket. And Maryland has a record number of evictions filed. So that's something that I just want to put on your radar, especially without having just cause eviction protections. It's something that is very breaking apart our community and our families when their people are being evicted for something like loss of jobs, in which they, if they can only have a little bit of assistance, it would be prevented. And so I encourage the people of this panel to allocate more resources to preventing evictions. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, you're next.
Hello, I'll be speaking on Matt Losak's behalf tonight. He's testifying in Rockville. Good evening, Madam Chair and Montgomery County Delegation, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify on the Montgomery County Renters Alliance legislative priorities for this session. My name is Emily Towie, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Renters Alliance, the first and only regional nonprofit dedicated exclusively to advancing renters' rights through outreach, education, organizing, and advocacy. Given the current housing crisis this nation is experiencing, protecting those in rental housing needs to be a top priority. Tenants are routinely faced with unjust evictions, excessive rent increases, and substandard housing conditions with little remedy available. One way for tenants to hold landlords accountable is to formally organize and establish tenants associations in order to empower themselves with knowledge of their rights and build strength in numbers. The unfortunate reality is that participation in tenants associations can often lead to retaliation from landlords and result in baseless non-renewals and notices to vacate. And without just cause eviction protections, tenant association members are left vulnerable to retaliation and constructive evictions for simply seeking the services that they are entitled to with little to no defense. Just as labor unions allow workers to stand together to ensure their rights are protected, tenant associations should be allowed to advocate for their rights as renters without fear of losing their homes. At the federal level, the Tenants' Right to Organize Act has been introduced, which guarantees HOC voucher recipients and LIHTC residents the right to establish associations and protects association members from retaliation. Just cause protections go hand in hand, as they not only help to strengthen organizing abilities, but are a necessary part of the comprehensive solution to protect renters. Last session, the House of Delegates voted 96-37 in favor of just cause, and this is the year for the Senate to follow suit. We applaud the delegates who voted in favor and urge the Montgomery County Delegation to make this a priority. As the #1 eviction filing state in the country, Maryland's renters need all of the legislative support needed to feel safe in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you both. Colleagues, any questions for this panel? Don't see any raised hands, so thank you both.
Thank you.
Move to the next one.
All right. And in our next panel, we have Jerry Garson, Joe Buckerer, Jean Anderegg, Miriam Hamilton, and Lawrence Bernard. Jerry, are you ready to kick it off?
Yes. Maryland real property tax assessment procedures problems. There are a number of problems with the methods used by the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, SDAT. First, the methods used by SDAT do not appear to be in compliance with the Maryland State Constitution. Article 14 of the Maryland Constitution Declaration of Rights says that no aid, charge, tax, burden, or fees ought to be rated or levied under any pretense without the consent of the legislature. Article 15 of the Maryland Constitution Declaration of Rights says that the General Assembly shall, by uniform rules, provide for the separate assessment, classification, and subclassification of land and improvements on land as it may deem proper, and all taxes thereafter provided shall be levied by the state for the support of the general state government, and the counties and by the city of Baltimore for their respective purposes shall be uniform with each class or subclass of land and improvements on land. My reading of these articles taken together is that the legislature's explicit consent is required before any tax is levied, and the General Assembly has no authority to delegate the creation of uniform rules. How real property assessments are calculated. I have found no evidence of legislative action related to or oversight of the real property assessment rules, and in my view, the consequence can be seen in clearly the example of the depreciation policy. Land does not seem to be valued uniformly between single-family houses and commercial property. One of the other problems is that heating, ventilation, air conditioning units, HVAC, and houses are expected to have a 190-year life. Has the legislature provided any guidance on how the life of a single-family home should be 190 years, 1% for the first 10 years, and 0.5% for the next 180 years? The legislature can set up a real property classification system similar to what New York State has, which provides 4 classifications of real property. One is 1 to 3 family houses, apartment houses, commercial real property, utilities, railroads, and Maryland now has. County executive likes the idea. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay to go? Sure.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Good evening. My name is Joe Butcher, and I am the president of the board at the Elizabeth at 4601 North Park Avenue in Chevy Chase, and I'm the chair of the Community Advisory Committee for the Village of Friendship Heights. I've had the opportunity to provide comments on the topic of BEPS at all levels, and while everyone has expressed interest in listening, my impression is that there's little understanding of the art of the possible in condominium associations and the restrictions placed on us by the county, by the state, and by our own bylaws. People are confused with the lack of clear direction and the costs being necessitated by an ill-informed plan. In my various roles, I represent a few thousand voting households, and among this panel, that number rises substantially. It is important for us to perform upgrades. We need to do so, though, within our means and the footprint that we have. Everything in our building is powered by electricity, except for our gas-fired boilers, which are very efficient in providing large quantities of hot water used for domestic use, and our air handler systems. Our reserve plan has us updating these 50-year-old systems this fiscal year at a cost of $1 million. Each building component has a recognized utility in life, but this is not recognized by either Montgomery County or the state plan. Hence, useful life needs to be a consideration. We need to make decisions now because of our need to replace our boilers, and we are doing so without much guidance from the state and what seem to be changing guidelines by the county. We're using BEPS guidelines as the roadmap, though. To achieve the best balance between cost and mission savings, our plan has several elements at the cost of $3.4 million. Existing grants and rebates provide only about $187,000, and we are not able, given our structure, to take advantage of tax credits. We will be more efficient in our use of gas from a cost perspective. Our estimate on energy savings is $215,000, but because we will not be able to meet the carbon standards, we'll need to pay a tax of $229,000, despite our reducing our emissions by about 40%. So we need reasonable targets, better coordination, elimination of penalties, and even the extent for the county to be pulled out of the state plan. Please find a way to make reason and feasibility part of the consideration set.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have Jean, I believe. Yes.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity to speak. As board president of the Grosvenor Park 3 condominium, I urge you to address the dilemma that older condos such as GP3 face in attempting to meet state building energy performance standards. GP3 is a 1960s high-rise condo of 414 units that uses natural gas for heating, hot water, and cooking. Due to our history of proactively investing in energy-saving measures, our 2023 energy use intensity score was 46.3, and we ranked in the 94th percentile nationally in terms of energy efficiency. We clearly take climate change seriously and have made significant progress in reducing our consumption. At this point, however, we have very few options left for the further reductions required by BEPS other than replacing gas-fired boilers and stoves. Unfortunately, after hiring engineers to study the feasibility of electrifying our boilers, we have determined that we cannot do that. Not only are the costs exorbitant, but we lack the space required for the equipment and the work would mean displacing residents for extended periods of time. Even a small step, such as converting gas stoves to electricity, would cost $5 to $8 million and displace residents. The only improvement we could feasibly make, converting gas dryers to electric ones, would cost $1 million and yield very little in the way of energy savings. Electrification, then, is simply an impossibility for our building and many other similar buildings, and a mandate to become fossil fuel free or radically reduce our already low EUI would essentially drive us out of existence. We understand the urgency of climate change, but ask for reasonable targets for energy improvements and that they apply to all residents, high-rise occupants and single-family homeowners alike. Right now, these standards place an unfair burden on condo owners and threaten our ability to maintain communities that house thousands of Montgomery County residents. Please help us keep our homes.
Thank you very much. Miriam Hamilton, please.
Good evening, Montgomery County Delegation, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Miriam Hamilton, board member at the Promenade Towers in Bethesda, a 51-year-old co-op with 1,071 units. The condo and co-op representatives speaking with you today have spent many hours explaining to council members, state senators, and delegates that we can't meet the state and county regulations without waivers and alternative paths. And without knowing how alternative paths work, we can't plan for modest expenditures to partially electrify, but must have faith that we guess correctly at what the regulation will allow and proceed to plan purchases to comply with target dates of 2030 and beyond. As you know, the Lawrence Livermore studies provided the rationale for BEPS by predicting savings for most buildings and modest costs to others with full electrification, but did not account for heavy up and electrical upgrade costs. AOBA estimates that complying with Montgomery County BEPS will cost $26 per square foot on average, but that does not include those added costs that run in the millions. Furthermore, the Inflation Reduction Act doesn't fund those measures, yet electrical upgrades and heavy up measures are critical to eliminating carbon. Could PEPCO and other providers actually meet the demand of data centers, Maryland buildings, AI, and e-currency? Is there any movement toward merging the state BEPS regulation with Montgomery County's? Please provide guidance on alternative compliance paths and offer condos and co-ops the opportunity to take advantage of Inflation Reduction Act tax credits by creating an option for direct payments of costs for renewable installations. Please work with the state to merge both regulations in a way that is feasible for us. We ask you to pay attention to the fact that real barriers to the law stand in the way of complying.
Did you want to wrap up real fast, Ms. Hamilton?
No, thank you. It was all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. And I believe that leaves Lawrence Bernard, please.
Thank you. I'm an owner and resident in the Willoughby, a large condominium in Friendship Heights. I'm on the Willoughby's Board of Directors and the de facto BEPS point person for the Community Association Institute's Maryland Legislative Committee, but I'm speaking only on my own behalf. The Willoughby faces the same issues and obstacles for BEPS compliance that Joe, Jean, and Miriam have just discussed. Our building uses natural gas for heat, hot water, and cooking. Electrification will be extraordinarily expensive and perhaps impossible. I expect the Department of Energy to propose an unattainable standard for energy efficiency for multifamily buildings in 2027. It will probably require the Willoughby to cut our energy use by an impossible 61%. The Willoughby has been very fiscally conservative, but many condominiums are already struggling to meet the statutory reserve requirements. We're all already facing tight budgets, and we face an enormous unfunded mandate under BEPS, and we will be fined if we cannot comply. So I propose a solution, an approach that I understand was considered during the development of the Climate Solution Now Act, the CSNA, and I joined Joe Boucher and urge you to pass an amendment to the Climate Solutions Now Act that would exempt Montgomery County buildings from the state BEPS and the CSNA, and let county buildings be regulated only under the county's BEPS statute and regulation. We would still be subject to BEPS requirements, and an exemption from the state BEPS would help us to deal with the uncertainty that we now face of being regulated by two agencies that are not apparently coordinating their efforts. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, and thank all of you on the panel. Very important issue. Appreciate your sharing your concerns with us. I do not see any questions for this panel, so thank you all again very much.
Thank you. And actually, before we go to our next panel, Tiffany Kelly, who was supposed to be on a prior panel, is here, and we will turn to her for her 2 minutes of testimony.
Thank you so much for accommodating me. I'm at the City of Rockville building tonight, and I'm here because folks in struggle are addressing the city elected officials. I came on here tonight because I'm finding a recurring theme when we think about what we do for those in need within our community. We continue to provide the same types of assistance. We continue to look at economic struggle in the same ways we have all of my life. But what we're not considering is the cost to the entire society, because we have really been unable to address economic struggle adequately. And that is because we continue to address it from middle class standards and a middle class standpoint. I'm a consultant who focuses on not just what poverty is, but what it does. I'm nearly 50 years old. I just reached middle class. I got my last government benefit about 4 years ago. And people see my story as a success story. But when I look at my child and my 3 grandchildren who live in the same housing project that I raised them in, I know something is going terribly wrong. The way we are looking at this thing called economic struggle is not sustainable, and it's costing every last one of us. I'm a strong community advocate. I'm a strong advocate in our schools. But one thing we don't discuss is the fact that 73% of suspensions are not Black students, they're not male students, but free and reduced meal students. There are troubling outcomes that are coming just from being poor. And until we create a plan that truly takes in the voice of those who are in economic struggle generationally, we're going to continue to fail at this thing called poverty work. We have got to begin to look at this differently. We have to have the experts in the room, and it's not the people who have lived in middle class their entire lives, but those that have struggled and continue to struggle to end this thing called poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. We were glad you could join us this evening. All right, so we will move back into our regular lineup here. So our next panel consists of Raid Taya, former state delegate Saqib Ali, Isa Haddad, Liz Cabrera Holtz, Amin Shahada, Stephen Lapham, Nathan Feldman, and Nadia Carell. And I think, Saqib, you are the first one to start here in terms of who's logged in. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The Maryland Israel Development Corporation Center was an organization created in 1988 by Governor William Donald Schiffer to encourage Israeli companies to open offices in Maryland and to incentivize and to fund a recruitment effort to bring those companies to Maryland. That organization, the MIDC, receives over $300,000 per year from the state of Maryland and tens of thousands of dollars more from the counties. Most of the companies that the MIDC has recruited from Israel to Maryland have been arms manufacturers who sell weapons to the Israeli military. I'm not sure that that organization, if it weren't already created, would be created today by Governor Moore, but it has been in existence since 1988, and it just kind of keeps going without people questioning. And the funding keeps, it doesn't go down. It just stays the same or increases without really much question or controversy. No other country, Maryland has no similar organization or entity to recruit companies from South Korea or Canada or England or Mexico or any other country in the world. And I've tried to ask legislators and leaders why. Why is this case? What's special about this one country, Israel, that's different than all the rest of the countries in the world? They all have great companies too. And nobody has been able to give me an answer. Nobody even wants to talk about it, frankly. So, many of you legislators are immigrants or children of immigrants. Ask yourself, does this make sense to have a dedicated funding stream for this one country, getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax breaks, tax money, and a very wealthy country at that? And all of that doesn't even address the human rights issues, which we all know about, which have all been in the news for the past year and frankly for decades before that. Please defund the MIDC, or at least open it up to make it for all countries of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Isa Haddad, you're next.
Thank you, members of the delegation. On February 12th, our Senator Chris Van Hollen said of the Israeli government, "Kids in Gaza are now dying from the deliberate withholding of food. In addition to the horror of that news, one other thing is true. That is a war crime. It is a textbook war crime, and that makes those who orchestrate it war criminals." In an interview last week, Senator Chris Van Hollen said, "President Biden's inaction, given the suffering in Gaza, is shameful. If the president doesn't mean what he says about holding Israel to account for the lack of aid going into Gaza, then he should stop saying it because he looks so weak. My message to you tonight is to not follow the path of shame and weakness. Maryland taxpayer dollars should not be going to Israeli military contractors via the Maryland Israel Development Center, especially when the Israeli government is blatantly violating international humanitarian law. It seems inconsistent, to say the least, that the Maryland General Assembly can take steps to curb gun violence in our state, yet it is providing money to Israeli military contractors that give the ability of the Israeli government to carry out gun violence on civilians in Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon. As a Christian Arab, I fear our federal government and media perpetuate Arab and Muslim bigotry at home while disregarding Palestinian and Lebanese lives abroad. Don't let Montgomery County and our state remain complicit in militarism and genocide. Please defund the Maryland Israel Development Center or ban Israeli tech and military firms from benefiting from our tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz, you're next.
Hi, my name is Liz Cabrera-Holtz, and I'm a resident of Potomac, Maryland. I'm speaking tonight to urge the delegation to work to defund the Maryland Israel Development Center, which benefits Israel's military industry. For the past year, I, like the rest of the world, have watched Israel commit atrocities against the Palestinian people, including burning children alive, bombing hospitals, and detaining and torturing Palestinian doctors and nurses. I have no particular connection to Israel or Palestine, though I was raised by a Jewish father and a Catholic mother, and I have no expertise in Middle Eastern affairs, but no expertise is needed now. The deaths of these children, men and women, are being live streamed to our phones. Like so many people, I've seen horrific videos. This morning, I saw a video of emergency workers carry the dead body of a 7-year-old girl out of the rubble of a bombed apartment. I watched a man carry an unconscious toddler whose face was severely burned and head was bleeding down the street because there was no ambulance to carry him. And I saw a man holding the burned and severed foot of a child. Italy has stopped arms sales to Israel. This week, the US Senate will consider a joint resolution of disapproval to block weapons sales. This past weekend, Pope Francis called for an investigation into, quote unquote, his words, genocide in Gaza. And yet still, Maryland, as well as Montgomery County, continue to financially support the foreign country that is perpetrating these crimes. I appreciate the amount of money might not be large in the context of how much our state spends, but it doesn't matter because this money is also symbolic. Even a few dollars helps build support for Israel's actions and whitewash the horrors they're committing. So I ask the delegation to defund this center. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next name I had on my list is Amin Shahada, but Mohammed, I think we might have, sorry for the disconnect. I think you're next.
Oh, no worries. Either name works for me, so thank you. So good evening, members of the House delegation. I'd like to begin in the name of God, who's the most merciful to all of humanity and mankind, and the most compassionate. So we see all these participants here tonight verbalizing different priorities for Montgomery County. These are all good. But here we have the county giving around $300,000 per year to an apartheid state, committing the most egregious, the most abominable, and the most atrocious atrocities and war crimes against a defenseless population. There is an attempt at extermination and annihilation of the Palestinian people in northern Gaza as we speak. So this unwarranted favoritism towards one state certainly raises a lot of it raises serious question marks as to why are this tax revenue is getting siphoned off to a particular state as opposed to others. We don't know of any other state who receives this this type of recruitment efforts and these type of contracts. And we anticipate our remarks may go into one ear and come out the other ear for a lot of legislators. Since whenever the special status that Israel enjoys with the U.S. is put under the microscope and is questioned, we tend to our legislators tend to zone out and don't apply critical thinking to this relationship. But historians will certainly scrutinize what was the source of this unyielding loyalty and unyielding and unconditional support for a state, irrespective and regardless of how that state acts, regardless of if it's a rogue state. So we asked that there was no referendum to ask if the Montgomery County citizens would consent to this or if they acquiesce to this. But we asked that you, if you place politics and special interests over your principles, then certainly history will not vindicate you, and Montgomery County residents will see you in an unfavorable, morally depraved light. Thank you very much.
Next will be Stephen, to be followed by Nathan.
Yes, thank you very much. I've been impressed by the important priorities of all the speakers this whole evening, focusing on domestic issues, and I wish we could do that now. I have to agree with the previous speakers that we need to defund MIDC. We don't send money to France or Finland or Togo or Tunisia. What is it about Israel? Just this morning, Senator Van Hollen sent a letter to his colleague explaining why he's voting for the joint resolution of disapproval to stop offensive weapons, U.S. weapons, from going to Israel, to stop funding this. Jamie Raskin earlier this year voted to stop sending weapons to Israel. Why is the state of Maryland, why is Montgomery County supporting this organization that is giving money not just to Israeli weapons and surveillance corporations, but to the Israeli government? Some of these are Israeli military agencies. It makes no sense. There's been a lot of concern about anti-Semitism in this county, but why would we enliven anti-Semitism by feeding old stereotypic tropes such as Jews are greedy, grabbing public funds for themselves? Jews are manipulative, controlling governments and the media behind the curtain like a puppet master. Jews are violent, selecting force and intimidation as the basis of human relations. You are feeding the danger of Jew hatred by this horrible appropriation of public funds, sending it to Israeli military. This must stop. This must stop this year. Stop funding MIDC. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nathan, you can proceed. Nathan, can you hear us? You can go ahead.
Hello. Roughly 1 year ago, the 9 state senators from this delegation wrote a Trumpian letter threatening to defund CASA over statements condemning Israel's actions in Gaza. Particularly of note, the letter implied CASA was complicit in a genocidal call for the erasure of Jews, a defamatory and absurd claim given the longstanding work CASA has done with communities of all faiths. It's worth noting that this threat, when carried out, represents the undercutting of critical support services for immigrants in Montgomery County. The letter, however, did make an important point. We cannot use our taxpayer money to subsidize hate. Let's talk about Israel's actions over the past year and whether taxpayer money should be used to subsidize the MIDC. Over the past year, Israeli soldiers have stolen Palestinian women's underwear and posted images with it on social media. Israeli soldiers have raped Palestinian detainees to death and in some cases allowed dogs to sexually assault prisoners. Israeli soldiers have left graffiti of male genitalia in Palestinian homes. Israel's army has left behind mass graves filled with mutilated Palestinian bodies with their hands bound in zip ties. Israel has killed water engineers, aid workers, and journalists. The New York Times reported that Israel's army uses Palestinians as human shields. Israel allows settlers to lynch Palestinian civilians and drive them off their land. Finally, Israeli leadership has repeatedly sabotaged negotiations to end the genocide and secure a release of the hostages again and again. The crisis is only worsening. In March of this year, Jared Kushner stated that Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable, and Israel has stated that Palestinians would not be allowed to return to their homes in northern Gaza. You all have the opportunity this year to reverse course and stand on the right side of history. Don't let Montgomery County remain complicit in genocide. Cut ties with the Maryland to Israel Development Center, which partners with Israeli tech and military firms. Show Israel that Palestinian lives matter to this body. Your action or inaction will define your legacy.
And last on this panel is Nadia.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Nadia Carroll. I'm a 31-year homeowner and taxpayer in Montgomery County. Most speakers here this evening have pleaded for increased funding and hopefully not even cuts to their existing funding for desperately needed services across our state, while acknowledging the huge budget deficit the state is facing. And they have asked also that wealthy corporations pay their fair share. Well, I'm asking you to cut some funding to enable these other people to get their budgets met. Cut funding to the Maryland Israel Development Corporation, which assists wealthy corporations who are not paying their fair share in order to free up funds, and especially for services for behavioral health and to the disabled. Others before me have detailed the problems with the companies funded by the Maryland Israel Development Corporation, and with the problem of even having a country-specific agency. These companies have offices in high-cost places like Hunt Valley, and their employees have commensurate salaries. And the 2025 goal for the MIDC is to provide additional support to the Israeli companies presently in Maryland. Meanwhile, services for so many Maryland residents are woefully underfunded. And I would like to relate a personal experience with the lack of services for our developmentally disabled population. And as noted earlier, the serious lack of emergency psychiatric hospital beds across the state. I once spent 12 hours waiting with my child who needed a psychiatric bed, but before one became available, I had to leave her alone in the waiting area to go to a different hospital to get my scheduled cancer radiation treatment. This is unacceptable. This is not how we should be treating our residents. This is not how we enable our citizens to work to their potential and pay taxes to our great state. I urge the delegation to use our taxes to save and improve lives, not to fund foreign companies that work to destroy lives. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We did have one other witness for this panel, Raid Taya. I don't see them in the Zoom room, and I do not see any hands raised by members of the delegation. So thank you to the witnesses on this panel, and we will move to the next panel.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. But before we move on, just a very brief comment with regard to commentary we have heard. Clearly, the misinformation, disinformation, and false information campaign surrounding the conflict in the Middle East obviously continues in full force. I will not engage in that conversation. However, I do deal in fact. And for my colleagues who are here tonight, the facts are that the MIDC has literally generated hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue here in the state of Maryland, representing tens of millions of dollars in income tax and real property tax to the state of Maryland to pay for so many of the things that we were hearing discussed at tonight's hearing, pardon me, in addition to hundreds of jobs employing Marylanders who then in turn themselves pay taxes to the state of Maryland. The fact of the matter is, overwhelmingly, the success stories of the MIDC are about huge advances in the life sciences, technology, and overwhelmingly medical innovations and life-saving vaccines and drugs that help humans across the world. So, as I said, I deal in fact, and with that, I thank your indulgence momentarily. And our next panel will start with Michelle Whitaker, followed by Al Carr, followed by Jason Maxstein, and then Cheryl Gannon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Chair Kramer, and thank you, Chair Polakovich-Carr. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I want to thank the entire delegation for hosting the legislative priorities hearing. As was mentioned, I'm Michelle Whitaker. I'm the Executive Director for Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. And on behalf of our entire coalition and the hundreds of volunteers that we have across the state, I want to urge the delegation to continue to advance voting reforms, particularly ranked choice voting for Marylanders. And this should be a priority for the 2025 session and beyond, because we have lots of interest that's growing across the state. Our advocates have been before you many times, and since the coalition formed in 2018, we've had one particular ask, and that's enabling legislation. And that is still a priority, and I want to just thank Delegate Kaufman for being the lead sponsor for introducing that, and all of the sponsors for MC 925. And I hope the entire delegation will throw their support behind it, as they've done before, to move that bill forward. In addition, I want to just thank Senator Kagan for taking the lead on our second priority, which is a statewide primaries legislation that would allow for the RCV to be used for statewide presidential primaries. As many of you could imagine, for the next presidential primary, we'll have many candidates from both parties who will be vying for that top spot. And our coalition believes that that can be a very useful tool for helping Marylanders make a decision in that election. In addition, RCV Maryland is part of the Everyone Votes Maryland coalition, and I want to raise just two quick priorities for the coalition, which include restoring full voting rights to those who are incarcerated and making sure that we expand language access across the state for all voters when they're participating in elections. I look forward to seeing you all in Annapolis, and thank you very much.
Perfect timing, Ms. Whitaker. Well done. And next up is our friend and former state delegate, Al Carr.
Good evening, friends and former colleagues. I am here to ask for stronger campaign finance laws and better enforcement. In April, I was at the Trader Joe's at Darnestown and Travilla Road and noticed some young people in the parking lot with clipboards gathering signatures for a ballot question about term limits for the county executive, and they confirmed that they were paid. It was obvious to me that a large amount of money was involved in this effort, but to learn who was behind it, we had to wait. There were large donations, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000, and expenditures of $66,000 beginning in February. It was dark money until the details became public on June 20th, nearly 4 months later, when the campaign finance report was due. A better system would require disclosure of ballot question donations and expenditures greater than $10,000 within 48 hours. That sounds like a bill. And that brings me to my second point, which is the need for better enforcement. In the 2022 primary election, there was an entity who dropped $700,000 in dark money into the Montgomery County Council primary contests. They did not disclose which candidates they were promoting or promptly disclose their large donations and expenditures as required by law. Complaints to the State Board of Elections were met with crickets. I did learn that the state prosecutor eventually contacted one of the complainants and that in lieu of enforcement, the entity was allowed to quietly amend their campaign finance report 2 years late. No fine, and it was actually a repeat offense. Meanwhile, candidate who got fined a large amount for a very minor infraction. So ask that you look at these issues, and thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Delegate Carr. We are now going to move on to Jason Maxstein, please.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Jason Maxstein. I run the local news blog Moderately Mocha, but today I'm testifying as an individual. I'm testifying today about my priorities for the next session, which I hope to be joined by many others to push for in the coming months. My focus for this session is voter rights and election reform. There are 3 major issues I would like to see addressed. Appointment reform and special elections. As has become increasingly clear over the past 2 years, our county has a major problem regarding the appointment process. Per MoCo 360, over 40% of our delegation is now made up of officials originally appointed. I mean this is no disrespect to members who were previously appointed, but we need to make this process fair and more transparent. Currently, a small body appoints officials to districts that a majority of the body cannot even vote for if the elections were to be held. Often this body even selects its own members for vacancies. It is not right or fair, and certainly not democracy. According to Montgomery Perspective, Montgomery County residents have repeatedly voted in favor of special elections, and polling also suggests most support them. I support other creative solutions to this problem as well. Number 2, allowing change of party affiliation closer to or on election day. This one's pretty simple. I'm strongly in favor of legislation such as Delegate Chee's bill from last session, which is a baby step towards fair elections to allow party affiliation changes closer to or on election day. Currently, those not registered can join a party on election day, but it's more difficult for those changing affiliations. Open primaries. Lastly, I strongly believe that in order to allow everyone to have a say in our elections and support democracy, we need to move towards open or nonpartisan primaries. Ideally, we would combine nonpartisan primaries and RCV to have a meaningful general election. A small step towards this would be to allow unaffiliated voters to participate in our local elections when they count. Currently, many millions of dollars of public funds are used in primaries, which many are excluded from voting for in full. Thank you for your time, and I'm always open to have additional conversations with any of you offline, discuss any of these priorities. Thank you.
And thank you very much. So the last person on this panel is Cheryl Gannon.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Gannon, and I'm the president of the Montgomery County Civic Federation, a 100-year-old umbrella organization of civic associations across the county. Through our delegates, we reach over 20,000 households, promoting effective advocacy for communities. This year, we will implement a comprehensive advocacy program, and we look forward to working with the state delegation. We recognize that the budget presents many challenges and choices, but the areas of importance to us would include transportation and infrastructure. We call on the state to invest in improving the MARC commuter rail service and WMATA metro system. We encourage prioritization of the Purple Line, which has faced delays and funding setbacks, and the American Legion Bridge is in poor condition with a current lifespan of about 6 to 7 years. Second, the blueprint for Maryland's future must be funded to achieve the promise of a world-class education system, particularly for students in underserved communities. Many of our schools are over capacity, and we urge equitable funding to support school construction. And third, we thank Senator Kramer for his work last year to establish a People's Council for Land Use in Montgomery County, a top priority of the Civic Federation for many years. We were disappointed that most of our state delegates did not support this bill. As you know, land use in both Montgomery and Prince George's counties falls under a state agency, the MNCPPC. The state's land use coast provides a People's Council for Prince George's County residents, and the state reimburses the county for those costs. Last year, we asked unsuccessfully for parity for Montgomery County residents. Instead, the House voted for a compromise bill crafted without consultation with residents that, if enacted, would have undermined the existing county law by stripping out important functions. That compromise mirrored a council bill that the county's racial equity and social justice review found to be harmful to low-income and communities of color. Land use decisions are made through a very complex process. Providing an independent, neutral advocate for residents is a matter of fairness. We urge you to consider.
And thank you very much for that, Ms. Gannon. I do see that the good Delegate Kaiser has a question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone. I had a question for Michelle Whitaker. I hope she's still here. My question is not about RCV, but about felon voting rights. And you were saying that we had to do more. And I thought we had already done so much. So what haven't we done that we need to do in terms of restoring felon voting rights?
Is Ms. Whitaker still with us?
I don't believe that she is.
All right, I'll just follow up with her directly. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. And I don't see any other questions for this panel. So, oh, no, wait a minute. I take that back. I see Delegate Wilkins has a question.
I was actually
Or an answer.
actually, Senator, if you don't mind, going to give a very brief answer to
Please.
the delegate. Right now in the state of Maryland, anyone who is serving time for a misdemeanor or pretrial awaiting for their case, they're allowed to vote. Currently, though, individuals who are serving time for a felony conviction are not able to vote. And it just so happens that I have a great bill on that I'm reintroducing. So thank you for the question, Delegate Kaiser.
All righty then.
Thank you, Delegate Wilkins, for answering the question.
Okay, not seeing any other hands, thanks to this panel.
All right, and we will move to our last panel of the evening. On this panel, we have Kamal and Kelly, Elizabeth, Risner, Hazim, Moakit, Majid Khan, Susan Schaefer, Catherine Katzen, Cynthia Irville, and Theodora Sarato. My apologies. I'm sure I mispronounced several of those. I don't see Kamal in the room, so Elizabeth, you can go first.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Reisner, and I am testifying in support of the bottle bill, given my capacity as a physician. Each year, 2.6 billion plastic bottles litter Maryland's roads, shores, and waterways, or end up as landfill. And we know that these plastic bottles do not biodegrade. Instead, they break up into tiny fragments called microplastics, which readily disperse in our air, water, and land, contributing to widespread environmental pollution. Once in the environment, they end up in our bodies through the air we breathe, the food we eat, and the water we drink. Studies have detected microplastics in most human organs tested, including the brain, heart, lungs, intestines, testicles, and placenta. They are even found in meconium, which is the baby's first stool after birth. Research shows that microplastics have negative health impacts. These health impacts emerge from the two components of plastic, the polymer building blocks, which come from fossil fuels, and the chemical additives. Recent animal studies show that microplastic polymers cause inflammation in whichever tissue they are found, disrupt the microbiome in the gut, and cause abnormal protein folding in the brain consistent with dementia. And decades of animal and human studies have identified plastics-related chemicals as endocrine disruptors, implicating them in obesity, type 2 diabetes, preterm birth, decreased sperm count, early puberty in girls, and neurodevelopmental conditions like ADHD, autism, and IQ loss. Additionally, this past year, leading cancer organizations and doctors have named microplastics as a potential driver of rising cancers in adults under the age of 40. Maryland's proposed bottle bill will reclaim over 90% of beverage containers and therefore protect not only the environment, but also the health of our fellow Marylanders. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Hazim.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
All right, good. Good evening. My name is Hazem Mwakat. I'm a longtime resident of Montgomery County for over 21 years. So I'm here to bring to your attention two important issues. First is the rapid rise in anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, and anti-Palestinian hate. This is a very important matter that affects the safety and well-being of our families. The second point is about the curtailment of freedom of speech due to overly broad definition of anti-Semitism. So as a father, it is my responsibility to do all I can to make sure that my family feels safe and that they can freely express their views while respecting the rights of others. Anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian hate crimes have been on the rise in the light of the ongoing atrocities in Palestine. Hate incidents targeting Muslims, Arabs, and Palestinians have been reported across the country, and our county is no exception. According to the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, in the period from January to June 2024, they documented 4,951 complaints, a 69% increase over the same period from 2023. While I frequently hear our elected officials talk about the rise of anti-Semitism, little or no attention is given to the hate directed at Muslims, Arabs, or Palestinian communities. At the same time, there are attempts to curtail freedom of speech. Raising a Palestinian flag or saying Free Palestine or Free Gaza is not and should not be considered anti-Semitic. I would like to stress that we should not lose sight of the importance of freedom of speech as an enshrined right in the First Amendment. We should be careful not to make the definition of Islamophobia or anti-Semitism so broad such that we undermine our freedom of speech. Conflating criticism of Israel as a state or Zionism as an ideology with anti-Semitism is counterproductive, highly inaccurate, and will have a chilling effect. The incident with CASA in 2023 is a case in point. CASA was completely chastised by our elected officials for merely expressing their views on social justice matters in solidarity with Palestinians. So I urge you to consider these two issues among your top priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, and my apologies for mispronouncing your name, Hazem. Majid, you are next.
Hi, I am raising awareness and asking for bipartisan support for HJ 002 and SJ 005, supporting a long-term ceasefire in Israel and Palestine. This resolution was introduced by Senator Joanne Benson and Delegate Esavera last year. This resolution did not pass the Rules Committee despite overwhelming support for the resolution. Many Maryland elected officials have called for and spoken out against the genocide of the Palestinian people, including Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge, Senator Van Hollen, and Representative Raskin. Over 70% of the casualties in this conflict are women and children. What is most disheartening is the fact that many of these casualties are due to dehydration, starvation, disease due to unsanitary conditions, and just 10 minutes away, all of these facilities are available to Israeli citizens, just a 10-minute drive away. Israeli Defense Forces have been withholding humanitarian aid into Gaza since October 7th, 2023, more than a year ago. This resolution plays a pivotal role in ending the violence and urges the incoming Trump administration to provide humanitarian aid to Gaza, ensuring the preservation of countless lives. The humanitarian situation in Gaza necessitates immediate and substantial assistance. The United States must resume its leadership role as a mediator in pursuing lasting peace in the region. The central cause of recent violence is Israel's decades-long illegal occupation of Palestinian land, expansion of illegal settlements, and the discriminatory system of apartheid that denies Palestinian human and legal rights. The state of Maryland has an opportunity this session to be a global beacon of compassion, morality, and courage. I'm asking for the Maryland General Assembly to stand with humanity and pass this resolution to call for the protection of innocent lives in Palestine and Israel.
Thank you. I don't see Susan Schaefer in the room, so next will be Catherine.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak. My name is Catherine Katzen, and I'm here because WSSC plans to deploy smart meters across Montgomery County and Prince George's counties. I'm asking you to please introduce legislation to ban smart meters in Maryland because they have not been shown to reduce energy consumption and because they are a hazard to the public. At a minimum, please introduce state-level legislation requiring that any ratepayer, whether homeowner or tenant, for any utility, water, gas, electric, or otherwise, be able to opt out of a smart meter on their home. Delegates Charkoudian, Fraser Hidalgo, and Shi, please consider introducing an opt-out bill so that it is on the agenda for December 9th. WSSC's wireless smart meters would be placed where people live, sleep, work, and play. They would emit very strong pulses of radio frequency radiation 24 hours a day, numerous times an hour, every day and night throughout the year. Individuals should have the right to choose what they are exposed to in their own homes. Peer-reviewed published studies show the adverse effects of this radiation. And immediately after smart meters were installed on their homes, people have reported symptoms including sleep disturbances, rashes, hyperactivity, changes in children's behavior, learning problems, high blood pressure, endocrine and thyroid problems, heart palpitations and arrhythmia, dizziness, headaches, and more. Furthermore, smart meters can allow surges in overvoltage, burn wiring, destroy appliances, and cause fires. People should have a right to choose whether or not they want to have a smart meter at their home. Please introduce state-level legislation for consideration at the December 9th meeting, delegation meeting, requiring that any ratepayer, homeowner, or tenant for any utility be able to opt out of a smart meter on their home. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia, you're next.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Irville, Montgomery County. I support the opt-out provision when water companies want to increase their capital budget for such programs as smart meters. While I've been in Bruges, Belgium, and received a postcard through the door slot that showed a water meter. It had the water meter number for the house, and you were supposed to respond with what the meter said. This would have been a cheaper method if the idea was to cut down on meter readers, but postcard systems, which in Bruges have now turned to responding by email or telephone, do not have booths at the American Waterwork Associations. Our utilities people go to these places, they want to be state of the art. There seems to be some impulse to know where what household is using how much water at a particular time. But this adds to the budget, the capital budget of the water systems. So since they were not willing to try the postcard system, every person who cares about this, who wants to opt out, and who gets a water bill should be afforded the opportunity to report their own meter reading. Thank you. And please respect medical freedoms in Maryland. People are different, they respond differently. We try to embrace this, and please continue to support medical freedom. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. And our last witness for the evening is Theodora.
Great, thank you. So WSSC is again pursuing smart meters, and legislation, as discussed earlier, is needed to ban this technology, at a minimum to allow a free, no-cost opt-out to ensure choice equity, as well as human health and environmental protection. Now, in addition to the fire, privacy, and security risks, the short lifespan of these devices and planned obsolescence, and the fact that smart meters have not been shown to reduce energy use, nor to reduce costs, we do know that smart meters emit pulsed microwave radiation and will increase wireless radiation in the environment, impacting humans and also wildlife, birds, bees, and trees. Hundreds of scientists are saying wireless poses serious risks. Please go to emfscientist.org for that. So I'm Theodora Scarrato, speaking as a resident who personally, as a petitioner, sued the U.S. government and FCC regarding its lack of proper review for wireless radiation safety limits, so-called safety limits. They were unchanged since 1996. They're only focused on harm from short-term exposures, not long-term. And I was also executive director of Environmental Health Trust, the lead petitioner in the case, EHT et al. Versus the FCC. We had a favorable ruling. In 2021, the FCC was mandated by the U.S. Court of Appeals D.C. Circuit to address the record evidence that it had ignored children's unique vulnerability, long-term exposure, and environmental wildlife impacts. You can also go to wirelessandwildlife.org, which has dozens of peer-reviewed scientific published studies showing harmful effects to pollinators and other animals, including impacts to bee behavior, reproduction, colony strength, and more. So wireless smart meters are not safe. The history of tobacco, asbestos, lead, and forever chemicals is being repeated with wireless. And a great source to understand how this happened is a Harvard Department of Ethics investigation called Captured Agency, which concludes the wireless industry is using big tobacco tactics. I urge you to watch an October 2020 presentation to WSSC by Dr. David Carpenter, Harvard MD, on smart meters. He's director of the Institute of Health and Environment at the University of Albany. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I still don't see our other two witnesses for this panel, Kamal or Susan. So that and no virtual hands raised from members of the delegation. So that concludes our testimony for this evening. Before I turn it over to Chair Kramer to close us out for the night, I do just want to thank the robust public participation tonight and just put in a reminder that the delegation will be hearing local and bi-county bills that are specific to Montgomery County at 2 hearings next month. Members of the public can find out more about those bills as well as the hearings and how to sign up on the delegation website, montgomerycountydelegation.com. And I'll turn it over to you, to Chair Kramer, to close us out, please.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Appreciate your good work in putting this together tonight. And Ralph, thank you very much. Great work. Just want to say my appreciation to those who spoke this evening and to my colleagues who are here, and want to wish everyone just a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you all. We are